Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas, that you got all the presents you wanted, right? Everything on your list was granted to you. I hope that's the case. I got some cool gifts. I got a gift card to a movie theater. I got PJs. I got little sweatpants. I got some cash. It was nice, right? Nothing crazy. But I enjoyed my holiday. I went to see Nosferatu. Excellent movie, by the way. Excellent movie. I recommend it. The ending left a little bit to be desired, but overall, A+. A+. Acting was great. The atmosphere was amazing. The dialogue was on point. Yeah, if you're a fan of horror movies, I think you will enjoy it. I did. So, it is what it is. Yeah. But that's not today's subject. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Today's subject, we're going to be talking about Lex Fridman and the controversy surrounding his recent requests that he's made of Zelenskyy. So for those of you who don't know, he will be interviewing the president of Ukraine, President Zelenskyy. I think soon. I'm not sure if the interview happened today or it's very soon. It's very soon. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really curious to see how it goes. I hope it goes well. I hope everyone involved does a good job, right? But he made a request. We're going to read it in a second. That has sent the internet into a tailspin, right? A frenzy, if you will, of people attacking him, painting him as a Russian shill, as someone who is trying to actively get Zelenskyy to drop the interview. We'll go through it. We'll go through the arguments. So, just full disclosure, so everyone knows, my audience knows, Lex watches my show sometimes. Lex gives me money sometimes, right? To super chats and things like that. So I am inclined to be positive towards Lex, to be charitable towards Lex Fridman, okay? That is a bias that I have because he's nice to me and I'm inclined to be charitable back. However, I'm also, a lot of the people who are critical of Lex Fridman, I am inclined to be charitable to them as well. I consider them people who are allies, like Ukrainian Anna, for example. She's been on my show several times. I like her. I think she's great, right? So, again, right, I have a foot in both worlds, if you will. I'm obviously very pro-Ukraine. I have advocated from the beginning for more direct involvement from the U.S. military and NATO. I know a lot of my right-wing audience will like that, but that's something I truly believe we should have been doing, and we should have been doing for a while. We haven't. I understand the arguments against it. I do, but I think that Russia cannot win this war. It just can't. It can't be allowed to for a variety of reasons. I think it would further geopolitical instability for decades to come if they were to be successful in their land grab here. I think that it would send a signal to other countries such as Taiwan and China, right, of certain realities that will now exist in, and that America will not help you anymore if you need help. And I think that that world is going to be a much more dangerous place, a much worse place. And for all these reasons and more, I think that Ukraine needs desperately all our support, all the support we can give. Okay. That out of the way. Let's see what Lex said that was so distasteful to many. Okay. And there's more to it. We'll go through it. We'll get to it all. But let's start here. Can you guys see this? Let me do a little zoomy in so you guys can read along. Okay. And if during this conversation you want to talk to me about it after I present this, by all means, and especially if you disagree with me in my takes here. But Lex made a request. We're going to read the request. I think he's just right here. I think he's just correct. And we'll go through it, though. Cool? Cool. So, Lex Fridman. Dear President Zelenskyy, I look forward to our 3-hour conversation. I hope we can conduct it in the Russian language, a language we are both fluent in. Let me make the case for it and provide some context below. For the people who may not know, the Ukrainian language has increasingly become a symbol of the Ukrainian people's fight for freedom and independence. Unfortunately, it is a language I do not speak yet, but I am learning it. I do know how to speak fluent Russian, as does President Zelenskyy, and as does a large fraction of the Ukrainian people. Speaking in a language we're both fluent in will result in the most, he does a typo here, in the most deep, dynamic, and powerful conversation. We will, of course, translate and dub it into Ukrainian and English. This is a gift I'm asking for both Christmas and Hanukkah. He goes on. For anyone interested, here's a little relevant context about my personal and family history, given there's been an increasing amount of lies spread about me online. Kissy face. 1. Both my parents were born in Ukraine, Kiev and Kharkiv. If I mispronounce these words, forgive me, please. 2. I was born in, Kalovsk, Tajikistan. I lived in Tajikistan, then Kiev, then Moscow, then the United States. For almost 30 years, and to the day I die, I'm a proud American. Vedotov is my mom's maiden name. I was always Fridman. I love my mom and dad. They are still together and are awesome human beings. My full first name at birth is Alexei. Alexei? I don't know. But from the very beginning, everyone has always called me Lex, or Leoa, or Lyosha, or Lashenka. 5. I am not a shill for Putin, for Zelensky, for Trump, for Voldemort, for Gandalf, etc. I'm a shill for no one. No amount of money, fame, power, access can buy my opinion or my integrity. 6. I speak fluent Russian. I speak fluent English. But if we're being honest, I don't speak any language fluently. I love you all. Heart emoji. Thoughts? Just for those of you who haven't been following along to the drama, what's your initial thoughts here? Joe Holiday says, what do we consider to be a Russian victory? Hard to imagine a world where they evacuate all of Ukraine. That's off top. It's on topic, but it's off topic. It's a side question, right? A lot of people are very angry and upset that Lex asks Zelenskyy to speak in Russian. The argument, as I understand it, is thus, and I've invited some people on. Hopefully they'll be here soon to kind of give me, they can give their own argument. But since they're not here yet, I'll still man it as best I can. The argument is this, that asking Zelenskyy to speak it in Russian is an insult due to the fact that they are being invaded by a country, Russia, who has sought to eliminate their national identity, eliminate their inherent Ukrainianness. And so by insisting that this be done in Russian, you are giving in to that kind of narrative, and thus it's insulting. I'm sure that the people, when they get here, might make better arguments than that. But I am sympathetic to it. I am sympathetic to that argument, honestly. I get it. I get why there would be political issues with speaking in Russian. I think it does no one any favors to deny that it is a politically fraught thing. It just is. However, if your goal is to maximize communication, if your goal is to maximize the understanding between the participants, between Lex Fridman and Zelenskyy, then you want to speak in a language that they both understand the most, right? Find a common language which they both are best at and speak it in that. Lex does not do live interviews, or at least I haven't seen any live interviews. They're all edited. They're all post-productions, right? A lot of people have said that if his Lex Fridman's audience is primary English, so why don't they just do it in English? Because that way his audience can understand it better. Again, that would make sense if this was live, but this is going to be edited, produced, and posted. They will dub it into English. There will be no barriers in that regard. Zelenskyy, people say, is fluent in English. And why don't they just both speak English then? I've seen Zelenskyy's speeches. His English is serviceable. It's good. But I'll bet anyone $100 right now that his Russian is significantly better. Thank you, Dumbledum. Doubledum. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. Again, his English is fine. But I've heard his speeches. I've heard him talk in live events and things like that. It's fine. It's just not great. And I'm willing to put $100 on the table right now that his Russian is significantly better than his English. Does anyone want to take me up on that bet? That President Zelenskyy's Russian is simply better than his English. I will bet $100 right now. I'll PayPal you it. Does anyone want to take me up on that bet? Again, I'm not trying to insult the man. He knows more languages than most Americans. He knows 3, right? Like, this is good. The fact that he is able to give speeches in English is amazing. It's great, right? This isn't an insult. But if you're doing a 3-hour interview, you want to use the language that they are best at, that you can understand and that they can understand, especially in important discussions such as this, right? You absolutely do. Under what other circumstances, right? Like, a lot of people have said things like they could just get an interpreter. Why have a middleman in that if they don't need one? Again, I understand that there are political issues at play here. But there is no harm in asking. Now, a lot of people said, well, he should have asked in private rather than public. I agree that if he had a direct line, then private's the way to go. Okay? But here's the thing about world leaders. I would be shocked if Zelenskyy gave him a direct line. Likely, much as happens in almost every other instance in every other country, Zelenskyy has a staff. And that staff gatekeeps what he is shown, the information he is given. They make a schedule for him. Obviously, Zelenskyy has say in this schedule, but if you want to get a hold of Zelenskyy, you got to go through his gatekeepers. You just do. So, if Lex has, and I don't know that this is the case, I just don't have the information, right? But if Lex had been trying to get a hold of Zelenskyy, but was not able to get past his gatekeepers, or they kept pushing him off, or he couldn't get a direct answer, then it makes all the sense of the world to go public, because that's how he got his initial acceptance anyway, right? He, again, if we remember, he tweeted about it publicly. Zelenskyy publicly responded and agreed to it, and that's how they set it up. So that makes all the sense in the world. Now, I don't know if that happened. It's very possible Lex just toilet tweeted it out. And what I mean by that is he was just like thinking about it, and he didn't try privately first, and he just tweeted it out. If that's the case, then Lex, that was kind of a dumb move, man. You should have done it private first. But I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows, right? And we're all acting on information that we just don't have. So I can understand that being a valid criticism, and it absolutely is valid. If that was the case, I just don't know that that's the case. Tessie Johnson says we do know. I have some people here. We're going to bring them on. We're going to talk. Sounds good? Sounds good. Let me get him on. Hey, you're both live.
Can you hear me?
Oh, one at a time.
Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
You guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah,
Hello
you're
there?
a little tinny, buddy. You're a little tinny. You're a little echoey. I don't know what that's it.
Am I? turn myself down.
Yeah,
Am I good now?
Yeah, you sound good to me.
All right, good. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I guess
What are your
I'll hop
thoughts?
into it. So,
Go ahead. Yeah.
you said there's no harm in using Russian, right?
I said
Well,
there's no
that's
harm
not
in asking.
Well, no harm in asking, but
Yeah.
the point is, if it's granted, then there's no harm in using Russian. But even the ask, like, one is just it's like this. I don't know. It just seems useless on its face to like what grandiose idea like this Lex Lex is not. This isn't some like we're not writing a piece of literature here where like it has to be crafted in a perfect way. One, it's going to be highly choreographed on behalf of Zelensky one way or another. So if needed, Zelensky can just memorize the lines in English and speak it perfectly. But then two, there's the problem with like using Russian in this context, and this is known by world leaders. Putin speaks perfect English. He's given an interview to BBC like way before, speaks perfect English, never does it again. Always uses native Russian. Same thing why Turkey insists to be called Turkiye now, even in international. Like, there is an insistence upon nations, especially if they're trying to assert themselves, that their native languages are to be used in international matters or in native names. So when it comes to this sort of engagement, one, like the interview itself is sort of to equate it like there's something that we have to like dig into. So we need to use Russian because we're both native speakers of the Russian language. There's nothing to dig into here. Like, there's no debate to be had about any of the issues. Like, Zelensky is a wartime leader of a country that's under attack. He's wholly in the right. He's completely doing everything that he should and needs to be doing, and Putin is wholly in the wrong. Like, it's such a black and white issue.
I agree with you. I agree with that statement that it is a black and white issue. Putin is just wrong. Zelensky is just right. That's correct. However, that's not how these interviews work, right? That's not what Lex is looking to explore.
That's how this interview should work, because that's the kind of interview Lex gave to Trump. Just one softball after another. And, like, if anyone deserves a softball interview, it's Zelensky. Like, look, if you're a good person, I'll say this. If you're a good person and you are at all knowledgeable on the issues of Ukrainian issues, and I hope Lex is somewhat knowledgeable and isn't just going in blind, hoping Zelensky explains everything to him. There is nothing to be like there. You shouldn't come into this just like expecting Zelensky to justify the need for the existence of his country in like
there's some good news for you.
Russian language. And then I have another point, but I'll let you guys
sure. But there's
interject.
some good news for you, and then I want to hear from Testy here. But the good news is, all of Lex's interviews are softball. Every goddamn one. You won't find a hardball interview in his thing.
He's not going to go to get on Destiny than he ever was on most people.
But the way he was harder on Destiny was absolutely not hardball by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't know, the whole Arcelor thing, he dragged that for like 15 to 20 minutes.
In a 3-hour interview?
Yeah, but that's they turned into a whole segment, and Lex didn't back down from that. So like, and I've never seen him do with anybody else. Do that.
I mean, I've seen him do it with I've seen him do it with Netanyahu. I've seen him do it with
How did he push Netanyahu?
I'd have to look at the thing, but he does push a little, but he's never going to do a hardball interview. Lex doesn't do those. So I would be shocked if he did a hardball interview with Zelensky. It would be entirely out of character.
I just have very little faith at this point.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
Testy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm coming at this from the perspective, I'll just put my bias on the table. Like, I'm a big fan of Lex Fridman. I've been watching him for years, and I understand, like, I'll put this out on the forefront. Like, I understand the critique if when he's engaging in a political interview, if there should be some sort of higher onus rather than just, I guess, the quote-unquote softball. To Wick's point, all of his, he 99%, 95% his interviews are with academics and like people in the STEM field or AI, robotics. Like he's interviewed a bunch of chess players. Like that's more his wheelhouse. And I think the sliver that the public has seen of Lex has been since his Trump interview, which that might warrant some criticism in terms of how he conducted it. But that's not a departure from the norm. So you can say that maybe he's not good at interviewing political people, but it's not like a wide departure. Like he didn't treat them differently. The only things I wanted to add, because I actually don't know a ton about the conflict, so I'm not speaking on like the geopolitical nature of these things. I'm just focusing on like the controversy surrounding Lex. So in his initial tweet, he says this in the third line. He says, "For people who may not know, the Ukrainian language has increasingly become a symbol of the Ukrainian people's fight for freedom and independence." And then he goes on to say, "Unfortunately, I don't speak that language yet, blah, blah, blah." So he acknowledges the political implications. He understands like the optics of this and why Zelenskyy would be hesitant. Like he understands like the wider ramifications, at least in a vacuum. And my defense of him will be that I think for him, if you're looking at him as an individual, the reason I think he proposed Russian is not because he's not considering these wider political implications. He wants clarity of communication because he thinks that would be the best interview that he could have because they're both fluent in that language and they'll both be able to have a back and forth in a way that's not obstructed. And I've heard Zelenskyy speak English. It's passable. Like I think Wix said serviceable. I think that's fine. Not to say they couldn't have an interview in English, but certainly it would be more effective, I think, for them to have a discussion in their birth languages and languages that they're both fluent in. So that's my my initial.
What effectiveness are we reaching here? What are we looking for? What is, again, what idea is so profound and ununderstandable that can only be expressed in a native tongue? I've yet to see one example.
Well, so it's more. I mean, this is an argument more from intuition, but since Zelenskyy's English is somewhat lacking, there may be specific things that wish to be discussed. I also agree with kind of the first thing you said. Like Zelenskyy, ultimately, he's a politician, so like he is going to give politicians answers. I don't think he's going to have some big opening up of heart to heart. I don't think he's going to get into like, hey, what made you want to become an actor? You know, like that would be a question devoid of all of this political stuff. If Lex was interviewing him without all this other stuff that's happening, that might be a question Lex would actually ask him. Like, what inspired you to become an actor? Why'd you want to get into politics? I think all of that preamble is going to be kind of skipped, right? Like, there's important things to discuss. So I can't give you like a what could they possibly discuss. I just believe that because of the limited range of Zelenskyy's English, or I guess because Lex also tends to ask a lot of philosophical questions. So in his interview with the Argentinian president, I can't pronounce his name. That was the most recent one it was compared to because there was an English dub of him, even though he's speaking Spanish, right? So people are saying, well, why can't you just have an English dub for Zelenskyy, right? And he would probably do the same thing. Like you would probably still hear the answers in English. It's just that the conversation would take place in Russian. So, sorry, I know I pivoted a little bit. So in terms of, I can't give you a direct answer. I don't know exactly what further avenues it would open up. I just know that if I learned French when I was, halfway through life, whenever it was, I would have still a more limited scope of that language than the language that I was born speaking. So I just think it's easier to communicate in a language that you were born with, that you're fluent in. Does that make sense, or is that just kind of a ramble?
I mean, it makes sense if we're just like sitting here, like two people having a conversation. This isn't it. This is inherently, and Lex is smart enough to know this. This is a political conversation that is about to be had. This is why he's having that conversation to begin with. So when you look at it that way, then what is insisted upon by Lex Fridman is that
he's not insisting on it. Do you think if Zelenskyy says no, do you think Lex will not have the interview?
That's the thing. Zelenskyy will 100% say no.
Zelenskyy, as of today at least, the interview is still on. What if he says, so roll with me here. Zelenskyy says, yes, we'll do it in Russian. What then? Do you think less of Zelenskyy?
Honestly, in a way, yes, because
Really?
then that reeks of desperation of like I really need this interview.
I
Because
don't know
if
if it's
I'm
desperation.
Zelensky, never in a million years am I agreeing to do it in Russian. Why would I? Why would I once again, in the repeat millionth time, repeat the history of Ukraine being discussed in Russian once again?
Because he speaks
Once
Russian
again,
better than the
Russian
other
is
languages.
the language that once again defines how Ukraine gets discussed. That is the political implication that is being brought forth here. We may not like it, we may not see it that way, but it is what is happening. So, and again, like the another, and this is the insidious
I'll
thing,
give you
right?
this. I'll give you this, but I'll let you go, but I'll give you this. If Zelensky says no, I want to do it in English, and then Lex doesn't do the interview, I think that's damning for Lex. I think that's really bad for Lex. Is
Sure.
that thing? Right? Is
Yeah,
that fine?
yeah, and, but
I'll also agree with
But
that. I think that would be a
that
bad.
Lex
Yeah.
did nothing wrong by asking, and I would also argue that it would be better for Zelensky to do the interview in Russian.
how so?
That I'm not
He-
sure of.
Well,
I think
let
I
me give
agree
you my
more-
argument. Let me
Yeah,
give
go
you my
ahead, go
argument,
ahead, go ahead.
right? So there's a twofold thing. One, he is able to more, if a complex idea comes up, he is going to be much more adept at addressing that question in his native tongue than he would be in one that is not native. That's just true. The second thing is this is a unique opportunity in a way for Zelensky to make a direct appeal to the Russian people, right? Without going
They'll
through the
never see it.
translators of Russian
They'll never see it.
Times
They'll
or any of
never see it.
that, right?
They'll never see it.
They might
YouTube is
not,
blocked.
but they
YouTube
might.
is being blocked in Russia. They'll never see it. I guarantee you, they'll never see it. They'll never see Zelensky. This Russians will never relay Zelensky's
Do you not think they
speeches
have
without how he
VPNs in
edited
Russia?
them. What?
Do you not think they have VPNs in Russia?
The people who are using VPNs to watch Zelensky aren't the people in Russia who need to see Zelensky speaking.
But they can distribute that. The ones who see that can take the arguments that Zelensky's made, make it to their friends and family. I know it's a long shot. Look, I get it. I know it's a long shot, but that would be the argument. I think that would be, if I were Zelensky and I was looking to do this interview, I could do any sorts of interviews all day in English, all the time to the English-speaking audience. I've always had that as a venue, right?
The Russians have no problem blasting Tucker Carlson with a dub, so like, why couldn't they blast? Like, why couldn't you get a Zelensky with a dub and blast it in Russia? Like, if you're so committed to like spreading it to Russians, the Russians think of Zelensky as a coked out ex whatever star that is just a puppet of NATO. He's been defined in the minds of the Russian populace, and again, it's just, to me, like, I think, like, I don't know. Maybe Lex is just kind-hearted, doesn't look at it as like a political conversation. I can grant you that. But if you're looking at it as a political conversation, what you're doing is you're sort of making Zelensky say no to to using Russian in their interview, and then you're putting him in a sort of a position. Oh, he's like, he's refusing to have open communication, so this sort of interview is just not going to be as profound as it would be otherwise. When we know, again, to me, it's so obvious that he's not going to agree to use Russian.
I think that's actually a fair critique, and I would also agree with Ken on the fact that I do think it would actually be a bad idea for Zelensky, because Lex even acknowledges, again in that one sentence, where he says that the Ukrainian language itself has become a symbol of the Ukrainian people's fight for freedom and independence. So I think, like, a lot of this boiled down. The initial thing when I heard this, I was like, why is this controversial? Like, I couldn't make sense of it. And then it, like, viewing it through that political lens, I understand, like, there's more downsides I see for Zelensky doing that than there are upsides
there is
for him.
Politically, locally, like, I will grant you, he may be less likely to win re-election if he does it this way. That's probably true. That I don't know if it's true. I don't know enough about the politics of Ukraine to say whether that will be a something that will be actually relevant in their political discourse to any real degree. but I can absolutely
Yeah.
say that I don't think that should be Zelensky's primary motivator in how he answers the question.
I think it should be his primary motivator. My defense is on the side of Lex Fridman, because I again, bias, whatever. I understand people also think he's a little bit like he's soft or whatever. He's always approached conversations from like wanting to see people's humanity and being empathetic and understanding, and he's made comments on the Ukraine-Russia war saying he condemns Vladimir Putin.
And remember, it's not just Russia that will hear it in Russian. It's the surrounding countries to Russia that also speak Russian, right? But not Ukrainian, and they do a little English, right? But Russian is something that a lot of people outside of Russia just speak natively.
That's also a fair point. Yeah, if he's not, yeah, I agree with the point. Probably in Russia, it's like the people who find that content will be the ones who actively seek it out to begin with. But yeah, maybe there are further implications in the region itself, just outside of Ukraine.
Absolutely not. These people will not consume Zelensky content. I met these people yesterday for Christmas. Some of these people. I have people like that in my family.
You made more.
Family. I was less than 70 miles away from the Russian border yesterday. These people will never in a million years ever watch this interview. It's just not happening. And the point I didn't get to make yet that I want to make, the Russian language, like the Russians insist upon this throughout like their media, everything. The Russian language, in their opinion, is the only language in which any art form, in which any discussion, in which any literary work can be created to be good. All other languages are subpar. They insist upon this. They always say, if you read all these are great authors from like a million years ago in the original Russian, it's so much better. The translation does not do it justice. That's once again sort of like a conceit to that, which is just like a cultural imperialism that Russia places upon everyone around them. They insist that their success is only not insofar as how well they're doing, it's in how much control they have over their neighbors. So to sort of put the Ukrainian president, like once again, the Ukrainians have to discuss the matters of their existence in the only proper language that it can only be discussed in Russian, once again. It's just like these issues may not seem like large things to somebody who isn't familiar with that whole situation, but at the end of the day, like everyone living just on the outskirts of Russia, as in like in the periphery, like neighboring nations, like I do,
right?
We're so sick of the Russian language. Enough of it. The Ukrainians have a language, Ukrainian. Why the fuck should the Ukrainian president use Russian? Lingua franca
because he's
is
better at
English.
Russian than other languages that he speaks. That's it. That's the only reason. He speaks better Russian, and I'll bet you $100 this is true. He speaks better Russian than he does Ukrainian. He speaks better Russian than he does English. That's the only reason.
It's not a good enough reason.
Okay, well, so I just want to add a little bit as well, because I'm agreeing with Ken more on the side of like the political reality of it, because I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I think Russia, especially with the language thing, that is like that like supremacy or I guess imperialist type of like thing. Like I can acknowledge the wider political implications, and I'm not trying to look at this in a vacuum, and I don't think Lex is stupid, because he acknowledges that part of it, right? So I can understand even the part of like, oh, you're putting pressure on the Ukrainian president, and then if he says no, then people are going to run with that one way or the other. For me, no matter what, like even this interview taking place, it's going to be twisted and used in whatever way people see fit. So whether it was in Russian or whether it's even if it's going to be in English, people will take what they want from it anyway. So I can give a little bit of grace on that end of things. The only other thing I was going to mention, because again, my whole thing on this side is more defensive Lex rather than like the broader implications. I don't want to speak on things I'm just not aware enough to speak on. But both of Lex's parents were born in Ukraine, and Lex did grow up in the USSR, but then he moved to America when he was like 11 or something. So he has a lot of family, not just in Ukraine and Russia, but like in the region itself. So I think from where he's coming from, he does have a vested interest in this region, and it's for him. It's not just I think it is a lot more deeply personal to him. He's visited the region, I think, in 2022 or something. So, like, to Ukraine specifically, not to Russia. Um, so yeah, I think he does have some a personal stake in this, but he presents his bias, and I think he's being honest about where his biases are. I think he genuinely does just want to explore this on a more like human level. So for him, the interest is not politics, but
Well, let's because I'm
fair
not
to
sure
say he's
if
not recognizing the political.
I'm not
reality.
sure if Ken here agrees. Would you agree with that assessment, or do you think that there's a like? I'm just
What
curious what your thought
what
are.
human level are we trying to explore the humanity of Zelensky? Like, I don't think Zelensky is coming into the interview trying to like do one of those like puff pieces for himself. Well, like when I was young, I really liked doing this. No, he's out here trying to rally support for his name. Like ultimately, Zelensky's goal, and everyone knows this, is to use Lex as a vehicle to reach some of the people that are maybe ambivalent towards whether the U.S. should support Ukraine or not, especially considering that last interview he did with Trump, probably quite a few Lex viewers, are Trump supporters, and maybe those people could be reached as to why. But so, like, I don't know what the
So do you
goal
think?
is
So,
in regards to humanizing. Like, who are we humanizing here?
so do you think? Or I can answer your question. I mean, the object would be to humanize Zelensky on some level. But do you think that Lex in this case then would just be like kind of a useful idiot? Like he's basically just acting as like a mouthpiece for Zelensky to kind of spew his sales pitch once again, just to kind
I
of like.
mean,
I think there is some value in.
Zelensky is obviously going to try and do that. Like, of
Yeah,
course.
I don't entirely disagree. I think just as a politician, I think that all politicians will do that to some degree. There'll be some level of pandering and some level of like, tipping the hat where it needs to be tipped. I think that there's some value from Zelensky's aspect to actually humanize yourself, and that was one of the criticisms of Trump's thing with like zero pushback or anything like that, is that there are people that will just be disliked. Like he's had, the president of Argentina on. Again, he was just asking him straight questions. There wasn't really much of like a dialogue, or he's exploring some of these things. He asked some basic follow-up questions, but Bernie Sanders, like he's interviewed a lot of political people, but that kind of cuts both ways because I feel like if you're like, oh well, you just let this guy kind of spew out his stuff. I don't know. For me, it's an opportunity.
Well, he's gonna get hate. Look, let's be real. Lex, no matter what happens, and Zelensky, to be clear, they are in positions where no matter what they do, there will be a substantive group of people who hate them and think they did wrong. So no matter what Zelensky does, no matter how he does this interview, no matter how he performs, there's going to be a subset of people who think Zelensky's just grifting, that he's just trying to take money for himself, that he doesn't care about the Ukrainian people, blah, 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 blah. There's nothing we can do for those people, right? Same with Lex, right? There's going to be a subset that no matter what Lex does, no matter how he does it, right, they think he's just this shill, that's the grifter, and if anyone can't see it, they're stupid, right? And Lex is just an enemy. But there's nothing we can do for those people either. They're lost.
Yeah,
but
the only thing I would say is you come off a little bit pessimistic because it feels like you're saying sort of like why have the interview.
I'm not.
No, you're not. I believe.
I'm not.
Sorry,
if I may finish.
I'm sorry, Polly. I didn't realize you were.
It's
you
fine.
were done.
But that's not who we're talking to, right? That's not who I'm talking to because there is I would like to think, and I'm pretty sure a larger group of people who do really care about what Zelensky has to say. And honestly, I think that there are a lot of holdouts in the West who want to see Zelensky be more human. What do you think about humanizing yourself to someone, right? And this is a good strategy. It makes people more charitable to your sales pitches, right? So when Zelensky does go on his sales pitch, quote unquote, I don't like calling it that, right? Because he's trying to defend his fucking homeland, right? It's not really a sales pitch,
That's
right?
also fair,
right? Yeah. If people view you as a human rather than a salesman, they are much more likely to take you seriously, to treat what you're saying in a more charitable manner, etc. So I think that there is a great value in having Lex and Zelensky talk and explore what does it feel like to be the leader of a nation who is under existential threat. That is an interesting topic. I want to see it, right? And I think a lot of people in the West could more identify with Zelensky and would be more charitable to his position and his arguments if they had that kind of discussion. And I think Lex is that's where Lex shines when he does interviews like that. Honestly,
I agree with all of that. I think
I
that is
just
the value.
I just find it funny. Like, I'm just a little guy. I'm just Zelensky, little guy running the country. Please send me ammunition. Like, I don't know. It's just maybe that's like a good strategy, but like, it's just I don't know. It just feels I don't know. Just feels kind of silly. But on the other hand, like, I guess my biggest problem with this whole thing, and I can understand the argument that like it is easier to have a conversation with two if like you're gonna go into that way, like, oh, this is how I feel. This is an everyday. This is how like I
and then
can't see my
he
family.
absolutely
But
wants to be speaking Russian in that case too, because that's how he
yeah,
can communicate better. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So, but like if you're gonna do that, like I don't know, it's just I guess what rubbed me the most wrong is just like asking him publicly. Then sort of like now you're putting the calculation in Zelensky's hands because like politically he like there's no shot you're using Russian like when you're at war with
Thank you
Russia,
for the
right?
sub, Rabbit. But
Yeah, but then on the other hand, like, do you now like deny it? Do you like I don't know, it just feels like to me, like I don't know, maybe I've just lost too much faith in Lex. It felt to me like
why do you
Lex
not
put
trust Lex?
Zelensky in a position knowing he'll deny it to then just sort of like come into the interview sort of like, okay, now we're not on great terms because you denied my request.
If he did that, I would have criticisms of Lex, but I don't think he's doing that. At least I'll say this. Um, Again, I haven't hung out with Lex. I haven't broken bread with Lex, but I've watched a lot of his content. I've spoken to him very briefly in exchanges on my stream, right? Where he's in chat and I'm not, right? And I understand that this is just intuition here. I get it. He seems genuine. He seems like this is what he honestly thinks. This is what he honestly wants. I don't see him as being this guy that's going to go and try to trick, trap, or dunk on any of his guests.
Well, and I'll also say he's also gotten shit from the scientific community because he interviews academics and then he starts asking them philosophy questions, and people are like it rubs when I say philosophy questions, like he'll ask them like what what inspired them, or like he wants to get down to like a different element of like what were your motivations, like what led you down this path. And I understand that's not for everybody, but that's just the niche that he's kind of chosen. So I don't think he's going to be like, hey, do you think a ceasefire is coming? Or like I don't think he's going to jump into the geopolitical state of things. He's going to more ask questions of like, how have you seen this affect like people around you, or like what are some of the sacrifices that you've seen that had to be made. Like he's going to discuss the human elements of it a lot more, and that's along with just his stated goal. So I just from his pattern, from just knowing from what he does in the past, that would be how I imagine he would sort of conduct things. I think even with Ivanka, like he was asking, because I remember that was the last one I saw the Trump thing as well, but like with Ivanka, he's asked like, what was it like to have your life upended? Like all of a sudden you're in the White House and you're in charge of all these things. Like that's an interesting question for some people anyway. Like I understand some people are just kind of like they just want the policy.
If you don't like Lex's content, I mean, you're just not gonna like content.
Yeah, fair enough. But I'm basically just saying that like I understand the skepticism, absolutely, and I also agree that because he agreed to this interview in 2022, the last time that Lex was there, and I agree that if he just sprung this on him like online, if there was no, which is kind of what it seems like, he added him in a tweet, right? So if he's kind of putting him on the spot on the international stage, because he understands that there's like international like implications potentially for this thing, I do think that is a little bit shitty. Because if it turns out that they do end up just doing it in English, I think almost guarantee he's going to turn down the request. I just really I don't see them both speaking Russian in this interview, but let's just say that that is the case. He turns it down, and they end up just Lex is speaking in English, or it's just an English conversation, right? Yeah, that does kind of put Zelenskyy in a weird position, and even Lex in a weird position now, because there is this like weird thing where it's like, well, I made this request and then it wasn't honored, so there might be this unspoken thing, but again, I think the people that are going to run with those narratives and those types of things were going to do it anyway. So I can understand that where that critique is coming from. I'm of two minds about it.
I mean, I guess like if I'm Lex in this position and I'm coming in with the best of intentions. I don't frame it just as in like an ease of convenience or something like that, and then like, hey, Zelensky, balls in your court. You
Right.
frame it in a way that allows Zelensky to agree to it. Like, hey, I'm Ukrainian, native Russian speaking, sort of like from Ukraine. You're a native Ukrainian that's also a native Russian speaker. There are millions of Ukrainian Russian speakers that are on the front line. So like to like sort of just to show that
Can
like
I?
I don't know
Yeah.
Putin's whole idea that he's defending Russian speakers in Ukraine to sort of undermine it. Like we can use Russian and to
Let me
I don't know
let me
something along those lines instead of just sort of like, oh, the ball's in your court, and if you don't agree, well, you're kind of an
well, can
asshole.
I ask you, because I read this post at the beginning of the stream, but I just want to read this relevant
Yeah,
portion.
I was gonna say I don't
and
think
hold on,
that
just
Lex
real quick,
did that,
just
but yeah.
please.
Yeah, you're good.
Just real
It's
quick.
your stream.
Because
sorry.
I want to know what Ken thinks, right? Because Ken disagrees with me, and I like Ken. Ken's been on my show before. We've had a lot of talks, right? So I'm just curious where in this, and I'll read it out, and you can stop me, right?
Sure.
When it gets to the point where you felt it was inappropriate. Does that make sense? Or that hit the
Sure.
framing or phrasing was inappropriate. And maybe it'll help me understand better. So this is what Lex says. He says, "Dear President Zelensky, I look forward to our 3-hour conversation. I hope we can conduct it in the Russian language, a language we are both fluent in. Let me make the case for it and provide some context below. For people who may not know, the Ukrainian language has increasingly become a symbol of the Ukrainian people's fight for freedom and independence. Unfortunately, it is a language I do not speak yet, but I am learning it. I do know how to speak fluent Russian, as does President Zelensky, and as does a large fraction of Ukrainian people. Speaking in a language we're both fluent in will result in the most, he makes a typo here, deep, dynamic, and powerful conversation."
Right there. Right
Really?
there.
Okay. What?
Most
Explain.
deep, dynamic, and powerful. Again, maybe just it's my context of sort of just like hearing over and over from like all these Russian speakers of how the Russian language just lends itself to the beauty of literature and art and prose and poems, all of that. Like there's like I don't know if like I don't want to go conspiratorial here, but like maybe I'm like being like a little lefty in 2016 that sees dog whistles everywhere except for like Russian propaganda. Speaking in Russian, well, language quote unquote, we're both fluent in, result the most deep, most like the using sort of this grandiose language in reference to Russian as to how using Russian will lend the most credence and will be the greatest. It just so harkens back to all the bullshit talking points from Russian speakers for centuries, how only Russian lends itself to the greatest of debates and greatest of literary works, and just rubs me the wrong way. And maybe I'm like reading too much into it, but for if in my context, that just rubbed me the wrong way.
I understand. I think that what he meant was, and maybe it came off wrong, wasn't that Russian was the reason it would be the most powerful, dynamic, etc. The thing he was saying is that they both speak the same language that they're fluent in would lead to that. So this would be the case had that language been Ukrainian, had that language been English, had that language been Chinese, or Mandarin, I should say, had that language been any other language, as long as they were both fluent and native in it, that would have led to that. That's what I read from that. But I understand. I'm just saying. And
Yeah,
full disclosure for my audience, I'm a Lex fan. I'm inclined to view his takes charitably because he gives me money sometimes. And he comes and watches my shows, and I find that flattering. So yeah, okay. Just full disclosure.
well, look, I get it. It's just I like Lex, like as
Do you?
his character. I like him in so many ways. It's just recently he's disappointed me, and on this issue, it just feels like he's a little too wobbly for my liking, given how black and white this issue appears to me. And then again, it's just something, the way he phrases it here, just, I don't know, just, I don't like it.
Yeah. If I want to interrupt Wick and annoy him.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that's like a cultural thing which I didn't even consider. So like, it's good to have that context. I absolutely understand like your perspective better.
And then the way how like you go from most deep, dynamic, and powerful conversation, and we will of course translate and dub it in Ukrainian and English. It's just that, well, of course you can read Dostoevsky in English, but the most powerful, dynamic, and grandiose is only when you read it in original Russian. And I think I even heard Lex say something along those lines about reading Dostoevsky. So
He
like,
might have, yeah, he's
yes,
a fan.
yeah.
The only thing I would add, because I know Wick went through half of that tweet, but then he does go on to say, like, both of his parents were born in Ukraine, like how he lived in Ukraine, then Moscow, then the United States, and I feel like he kind of softens that angle a little bit more with the context he's trying to provide, and he even says that he's not a shill for Putin, for Zelensky, for Trump, for anybody. Like, he's not doing it for money, blah, blah, blah. Which, take with a grain of salt. Like, content creators, like, I'm a fan of Lex and he doesn't pay me or compliment me, alright? So I'm just... But all that to say that, like...
a lot of people pay me, to be clear. And the amount of super chats I get from not from Zelensky.
From Zelensky? Oh, interesting.
That would be great if I did, right? No, but the amount of super chats I get from Lex make up like a 30th of my income. So right, it's not like a
I'm not calling you a sellout. Not for that.
Not you, but I see a lot of people in chat like,
oh,
he gives you money, you're compromised, you're a Putin shill, you're all this. I'm like, come on. A lot of people give me money.
Wick is a Lex orbiter.
Yeah, no, I feel
no,
like
Lex is a Wick orbiter. Get it right, but anyway.
Yeah, that's right. I feel like I got everything I kind of wanted to get out, and I do appreciate your perspectives, Ken, because and even I can understand a little bit more about like the outrage, I guess, that's coming. I do think that for a lot of it, to me, it boils down to the optics of it, because the optics are important, and this is why I think Zelensky wouldn't ultimately do it. Because...
By the way, I'm giving like the best Steelman case of this argument. Most of them are just stupid. Oh, you're asking him to do Russian? Like, how dare you? They're getting attacked by Russia. Like most of it's just stupid people that don't know what to do.
It's retarded. Yeah. And Scoopy Dooter in my chat, who is telling me I'm being a Russian shill right now, retarded. Let me tell you, I want Putin to be tried in the International Court of Law and hung by his neck until he is dead. I want every single invader in Ukraine driven out until they are out of Ukraine and Crimea, which is Ukrainian as well. I want the Russian army to lose so bad that it can never, ever threaten any other country again. So if you come in here and say I'm being a Russian shill because I'm calling you retarded for being retarded, you can get fuck right off. You have no standing. In fact, get backstage right now. Let me pull you up. Defend your argument.
I agree with
Defend your argument.
I want Putin locked up.
Why, I'm a Russian shill because I don't agree with you who... Scoopy Dooter, are you Ukrainian or are you a motherfucking keyboard warrior sitting on your armchair thousands of miles from any sort of conflict whose biggest problem in life is mommy and daddy didn't get you everything on your fucking Christmas wish list?
Look, I'm not gonna shit on people for.
I am. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Look, Wick's not Russian shill, but this is the problem with like. Maybe this is the problem with Russian misinformation and propaganda. It's just like it gaslights you into, I don't know, maybe Lex is like, it just puts you in a state of unknownness. I don't know if Lex is dog whistling here or if he's not. Or maybe Lex is saying, oh, I'm from Ukraine and I speak Russian, so I'm kind of Russian, so Ukrainians are kind of Russian. Or maybe he's just like saying, oh, I'm from Ukraine. Like, I don't know. That's the problem with a lot of Russian propaganda. It's not meant to push narratives all the time. Sometimes it's just there to create confusion. And so, like, maybe I'm being too harsh on Lex, and maybe we're all being too harsh on Lex. I don't know. An argument could be made for that. We'll see if and when the interview
As
happens.
I said, if Zelensky says no and then Lex cancels the interview, then yes, that's a massive L for Lex, and I want to talk to him and figure out why. Why would he ever say no to that? And Lex, if you're listening, if he doesn't do it in Russian and he does it in English, do the interview anyway, because this interview is too important to not have, right?
Oh,
So,
and
fair
if
enough.
Lex is listening and you end up also doing an interview with Putin, just ask him the question: aside Ron to Moscow, where will Putin run when it's his time to go? Where will you run, Vladimir?
To China for sure.
I don't know.
Xi Jinping's got a sweet
I
tooth.
don't know. You'll take him. Where will you run? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? You could step down now. Where will you run when it's your time to go? Guess we'll never know.
The last thing I'll add here, again, I appreciate you letting me speak here, Wick. But last thing I'll say is that Lex has made statements on the Ukraine-Russia situation before. He has condemned Vladimir Putin for the invasion, which you could say is wasn't a full-throated like you're the embodiment of evil. Like, he didn't go overboard, but he said he acknowledged that Putin's in the wrong, I guess. And he was also very critical of Tucker Carlson's, if you want to talk about softball interview, Tucker Carlson's such a fucking...
That wasn't a softball. That was a full deep throat.
That was,
okay?
that was like
just
you want to talk
gargle.
about being a shill?
Okay.
He's fascinated that shopping carts can take coins, and he's like, oh my god, look at the subway, people, look how clean it is. Oh yeah, okay, that's a whole other can of worms. But Lex was also pretty critical of Tucker Carlson, so I feel like that points a little bit of yeah, you are just literally acting as a mouthpiece. So to me, yeah, there's a bit of a differentiation between you are just acting as a vessel for this propaganda versus you want to have a conversation. And I think when politics gets involved, there's always a little bit of a barrier, because I don't feel like a lot of politicians will ever let their guard down fully, that you can have a truly honest conversation. But I think that's what, even if it's a lofty goal, I think that's always what Lex's goals are, is to try to get to that layer underneath. And whether or not he's successful it just depends on the person usually, or how receptive they might be. But that's all I got for you.
Yeah, thanks
I doubt
for
that
sticking
guy's
around.
gonna. Yeah, hopefully that guy pops backstage. I really want to see you raging him.
Well,
But
You
I'll
can
leave you
say
to
if
it.
you want.
Ken, it was nice meeting you. I appreciate the conversation.
yeah, been nice talking to you.
Yeah.
I'm
Peace.
glad that we had a
Really.
wonderful conversation. I'll just, I also have to hop off. It's getting late here,
enough.
but just for the end, I'll just have to say that there are people who care for Russia and see Putin as sort of representative of Russia, but guys, remember one thing: Zelensky, out of the two Vladimirs, is the one that cares more about Russia than Putin does. Because at the end of the day, what Putin is doing in invading Ukraine is hurting Russia a hell of a lot more than it is helping. There are hundreds of thousands of people dead on the Russian side. There are many more millions who are suffering economically. Inflation was bad out here due to COVID. You guys have no idea how bad it's getting there. You don't set your interest rates at 23% because you have 8% of month-over-month inflation. So at the end of the day, this conflict needs to end in a way where Ukraine just outright wins. We can't just sit here and pretend that maybe some sort of ceasefire is delayed. This cancer that's been sucking Russia dry and is now leaching onto Ukraine, it needs to go. They need to suffer and then be put in a position where they can't fend off their own population. And so that will be my final note. And I hope Lex has the best interview that's ever happened. And if it happens in Russian, then great. If it happens in English, also great. So
I just want it to
we'll see
happen,
how it
maybe.
goes.
Right? I'm with you there.
Yeah.
That
I do
whatever
want it to
language,
happen.
I just want it to happen, right?
Yeah, well, anyway, stay safe. Hello, Lactoid, and have a wonderful evening, guys. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, man. Thanks for coming by. Oh, well, there he goes. So just Lactoid, welcome to the stream. Merry Christmas. Before you go, before we get into that, right? If I know there were other people who had issues with my takes here on Lex, right? And on the interview. I've invited them all. I sent a couple of them DMs directly. I wish you'd come and say your piece. Was I mean to Ken? No, I was very nice to Ken. I was very kind. He was kind to me. We were nice to each other. And this is a problem I have. I'm 100% on Ukraine's side here. 100%. I just don't understand on a very real level why people have decided to make this, right? The litmus test they're having for whether or not you're a Putin shill or not. It feels very forced. It feels very astroturfed. Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense. But Lactoid, hello.
Yeah, I can't say too long, but I just wanted to. I saw this on Twitter, going around on Twitter. I saw Lex's post, and I saw a lot of people like complaining about it. But I think I'm very much, we don't have to have the whole argument about Ukraine, Russia. But if you know anything about Zelenskyy, like it makes perfect sense why Lex would ask this, right? So I don't know if people know that Zelenskyy is a native Russian speaker. Like that's the language that he was raised with. That's like the and before the war, or I guess before the 2022 invasion, Zelenskyy advocated for Russian as a language, like not like switching over Ukraine to Russian, but saying that like as a language, what's the problem, right? He was actually critical of the critics of the Russian language because he is a Russian speaker. Ukraine has a large proportion of its population as Russian speakers, especially so in the entire region, essentially, where the war is occurring. So if you want to, speak to somebody in the language that they're, when he's talking about depth, yeah, like your native language is going to be something you're going to be able to speak with a lot of depth, right? His Russian is far better than his English. And also the people who are most directly impacted by the war, who are currently like involved in they're in the fighting, and at least like the people living in those areas, disproportionately speak Russian. So it all makes perfect sense. And I'm also very confused as to why, hey, like I know that your native tongue is Russian, and hey, I also speak Russian very well. Can we do this interview in Russian? Do people just
Look,
not
I
know
get
about
I get the
Zelensky's?
politics about it, right? Like, let's not mince words. I get the political optics of it. I get why it's a problem, right? I do. I understand. I just think that shouldn't be the deciding factor. I think that the communication and maximizing understanding within the communication should trump that 100% every time, right?
Well, it's not, but the politics, the difficulty with the politics here is that, I mean, you have to be a little bit careful with the politics because one of the allegations against Ukraine from the Russian side was that you guys are destroying the Russian language and you're unfairly demonizing the Russian language and you're, genociding Russian culture. That was one of the allegations because Russian, again, is a major minority language within the country of Ukraine. So, like, when people are saying, "Oh no, like, we can't do Russian," that's like the language of the people in Russia. I mean, you're alienating a very large group of Ukrainians who speak Russian and who grew up speaking Russian, and Russian is their main language,
But on
including
the flip
Zelenskyy.
side, Russia.
Zelenskyy grew up
Hold
speaking
on.
Russian.
If it again steelmanning the other side here because none of them decided to show, unfortunately, and that's sad to me. But I'll steelman their side because I can understand it. Russia is like trying to erase Ukraine, right? That's the accusation from the other side. They're trying to erase Ukrainian culture, the Ukrainian people. They're trying to erase their identity, their national sovereignty. And so by speaking Ukrainian, this is fighting against that kind of imperialism, that kind of cultural erasure that is trying to be imposed on them. And I get that. I understand.
Yeah, but Lex can't speak Ukrainian. That's like he even said so.
So,
I'm sure that if he spoke Ukrainian fluently,
I'm with you on
the.
I'm with you on the. They should speak Russian because they're just better at Russian than the other languages, right?
Yeah,
but
it's his original language.
But we have to acknowledge also that there is a political factor here, and this is a political factor It just is.
Yeah, I understand there's like a political factor, but again, like all credit to Lex, he accounted for that and fully explained why exactly he was proposing it in Russian. He outlined all the reasons why he's not siding with Russia. It's not like it's any kind of like underlying political point. He's just saying, look, like all this aside, like I'm making it very clear here. It's not for a political reason. It's because like Zelenskyy grew up speaking Russian. It's his original language. He was a Russian language advocate for a while, and like there's a very large proportion, obviously still a minority, but there's a very large proportion of Ukrainians who speak Russian, and so especially and primarily in the war-torn areas. So when Lex is proposing this, to me, like knowing these things, it makes perfect sense. Like from an entirely non-political reason, which he makes sure to specify why specifically he's proposing this interview in Russian. And it seems like a lot of people don't know that history, and so they're sort of rabidly attacking him. I think it's very like unfair. Like, do you think
people have
even
hated
know?
Lex for a while. On the Lex hate, right? I think this is
Mhm.
just an excuse, and it's the latest excuse for a lot of people who just hate Lex because he didn't push back enough against the person they hated, right? Whether that be Netanyahu, whether it be Trump, whether it be the Palestinian advocates that he interviewed, right? They'll invariably, this is what'll happen, right? They'll point to an interview that they think he did poorly at and say, look, this is why he's a shill for the other side. And this, unfortunately, is just added to the pile of more evidence that that Lex is some sort of shill for the powers that they don't like. It's nonsense. It's nonsensical. It's a circular reasoning that they're just citing each other as sources for. But that is absolutely what's happening in certain corners, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that I look if people, I don't see how you can see this as like he's platforming the president of Ukraine. I don't. You're right. There's going to be some people, I guess, who are pissed at him. You can't be a political figure these days and not have some people pissed at you. Whatever. I'm just saying for this specifically, I'm seeing a lot of otherwise intelligent people just not understand why he's proposing this, and then just attacking it like it's some kind of like I bet you probably like I bet you I don't have, have the numbers in front of me. But I bet you a majority of the people attacking Lex for this, they probably don't know that Zelensky grew up speaking Russian. They probably don't even know that. And by the way, there's significant differences in the language.
But I'll give, again, I got this for Christmas, is the petty cash I got. Again, crisp $100 bill for anyone who's willing to take this bet up. Like, I will bet this $100 bill against anyone that Zelensky's Russian is better than his English.
Oh, definitely.
Anyone want to take me up on that? That it's significantly better than his English. Again, I will give you this money if you're right, and you can show me you're right, and we'll use it. We'll get a third-party arbitrator in here, right, to do that. But again, and that's the crux of the argument here is it really is that simple. That's his best language. Lex can speak it. That's what Lex wants to speak in because it's his best language. That's it. There's no other hidden meaning. There's no other hidden agenda behind it. That's it, literally.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's it. I think that's the reason why he proposed this. But I do think, though, that there is a risk here in the kind of the pushback and because again, there's a large proportion of Ukrainians who speak Russian. You want to alienate the people in the Ukrainians in the east of Ukraine that speak Russian.
I wouldn't go that far, man. I don't know if this.
You don't think so? You don't think that might like contribute to this?
It might. I don't know. I just have no evidence that that's the case, and I'm not going to do the same thing that they're doing to Lex to them. I'm just not. So unless there's like some solid evidence that I can see that there is a concerted push for this for that reason, I'm just not going to say that.
Concerted push for what?
Like you said, to erase the language of the Russian speakers in Ukraine.
Yeah, that was one of the cited reasons for the invasion. And you don't think Russian news agencies are going to pick up on this?
No, I'm talking about the people attacking Lex now. I thought that's what you were saying.
No. I'm saying that there's a risk here of you want a new propaganda line for RT. Hey, all you Russian-speaking Ukrainians, they don't want you. They don't like you. They don't want you to have the conversation in your language.
You just have to ignore the propagandists. So, right?
Okay.
I mean, you do. At a certain point, you just have to ignore the propagandists. Look, my biggest criticism for Lex, and it might not even be a criticism because I just don't have enough information. If he could have made this request in private, he should have made it in private. But I don't know if he could have, just based on how communications with world leaders work. right? Because, again, and I said this at the beginning of the stream, but I'll repeat it now. I would doubt very much that Zelenskyy gave Lex his personal number. I bet that Lex, once he made that request and it was accepted, was immediately put off to Zelensky's staff to be handled. Because, of course, Zelenskyy is fighting a war. He has 1,000 things more important than a Lex interview to deal with, right? And so I'm imagining that Lex, much as I do sometimes when I'm trying to book guests that are bigger, I have to go through intermediaries. And those intermediaries can be frustrating. They won't give you direct answers. They won't actually get in contact with you. They won't even pass on your messages. So sometimes you just got to go direct to the source, or try to. So I don't know if this happened, to be clear. I'm just supposing. I don't have enough information, like I said. But I can imagine easily a scenario in which he just couldn't get a hold of the guy and he needed to know, and so he just tweeted it out publicly.
Yeah, I mean, there could be so many explanations, right? He doesn't have like a real direct line of contact, or he's getting, has difficulty getting. I mean, look, it is a war zone, right? You're right. There's a million things happening, and also it also could serve as an explanation to the people who might tune in. Oh shit, why is this not happening in English? Well, it's happening in Russian. And then obviously Lex already laid out all of his explanation as to why he's requesting the interview in Russian. Again, it's such, and by the way, it was a request. If Zelenskyy says no, like, yeah, I agree with you. He should still do the interview in English, but like the level of just, I think, again, I think ignorant criticism of Lex on this specific question, it's a little bit. Again, it's just unnerving.
So
like they
annoyed.
don't know anything about Zelenskyy. They're just,
And I'm not.
you just a Russian.
Look, I'm not even annoyed at you, okay, Lex or Lactoid. I'm not even annoyed at you, but I am annoyed in general because we're right. We're just correct here, but everyone is gonna say, "Well, no, Wick, because Lex likes you. You're just defending your friend." And there's nothing I'll be able to say. Like that's as far as their thinking goes, right? It's like nose in front of face. It doesn't go any farther than that. They'll say, "Oh, Lex likes you. He gave you money a couple times. Oh, you were a shill and paid shill." And so our arguments here are just correct, but that's gonna be like fucking golden parachute. They're just gonna sail on in to their ignorant sunset on, and it's so frustrating.
100%. No, I do have to bounce, but I'm glad that you're on the right side of this issue, Wick.
It's
you
just
very
obvious.
often are.
But
Yeah. But no, I'll watch Lex's interview regardless.
I'm really excited
what
for
language
it.
it happens.
I hope it comes out there. Yeah.
I think it'll
See
be
you
good.
later, buddy.
Yep. See you later.
Rizius, if you have a disagreement with me, you're free to jump in backstage. Okay. If anyone here has a disagreement with me on this, and they would like to talk about it, you're free. This is an open kind of show. Just jump backstage. I'll pull you in. We'll talk. Well, Pop Shepsky, Conscience, if you don't think I'm an intellectual giant and you would like to explain the situation, by all means, it's open show. You just jump backstage. It's easy. Okay, you'll take me up on that offer? For real? Fair enough. You think his English is better than his Russian? Okay. You want to make that bet? $100. Who would you like to be the... give me some options for arbiters of the bet. Obviously, neither of us is a neutral party in the bet. And then show me your best English clip, or we'll get the best English clip that you can find of a presentation, a talk, something he's done in English, okay? And I will find something that he's done in Russian, and we will ask the arbiter which one is Zelenskyy better at. And we will abide by his answer. Sound good? Thank you for the €5, Prussian Menace. Appreciate you. We'd have to find a Russian and English speaker, right? Someone who speaks both relatively fluently, and we'd have to simply ask them. We'd have to find a neutral arbiter, someone who has no stake in either of our fights. Do I have someone off the top of my head? No, I don't. But I'm more than willing, again, seriously, and I'm not kidding. That's why I'm asking you to put forward your peoples. Because obviously you might be suspect of anyone I would suggest because you think, oh, he's just trying to make some money, right? Fair enough. Tessie Johnson, we're talking about a stake in the fight between me and Pop here, not the Russian Zelensky fight, right? The Russian Ukraine fight. Okay, Pop, I understand, but you have money on the line, so you're not a neutral arbiter in this. And I've heard him speak English. It's serviceable. We can listen to a clip right now. Hold on. Hold on. $100 on Zelensky. I'm $100 on that Zelensky speaks better Russian than he speaks English. Yes. I'm $100 on that. Let's find a speech that Zelensky's given in English. Zelensky English speech. Okay. Here's one he did today. You guys want to see one he did today?
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні
Oh, it's not
українці.
it's in Ukrainian. Hold on. I've got to find one he does in English.
Різдво. Наш щедрик, наш.
Okay. I might need a new site for these. They're giving me all the Ukrainian ones. Trying to find something recent. Here we go. Okay, hold on. Let me get through this ad. This is his address. It's 2 years ago, so it's not the most recent, but he's addressing U.S. Congress. We can listen to it, and then you'll understand what I mean. It's 20 minutes long. We won't go through the whole thing. We'll go through a good portion, though, and you can have a listen. Keep in mind that this is a prepared speech. This isn't an interview. He's reading, right? So even with that, let's go through it. Okay. We can watch it too, because why not? Oh, can you not hear it? Hold on. How about now?
In all states, cities, and communities. All those who value freedom and justice, who cherish it as strongly as we Ukrainians, in all our cities, in each and every family. I hope my words of respect and gratitude resonate in each American heart. Madam Vice President, I thank you for your efforts in helping Ukraine. Madam Speaker, you bravely visited Ukraine during the full-fledged war. Thank you very much. Great honor. Thank you. Great privilege to be here. Dear members of the Congress, representatives of both parties who also visited Kyiv, esteemed congressmen and senators from both parties who will visit Ukraine, I'm sure, in the future. Dear representatives of diaspora,
it's hard to get a good read from this because he's pausing a lot to allow for applause. But this is perfectly serviceable. It's perfectly understandable. Oh, oops. But I bet his Russian's a lot better than this. Because that ain't perfect by any means. Oh, man. I'm always hesitant to approve foreign language mod things. But, yeah. Again, I'm not saying this is an insult to the guy. He speaks more languages than I do, better than I do, right? But it's just true that your native tongue, Russian, is going to just be better. How is... Oh, okay, I'm not reading that. Firefox. Okay, don't be weird. And yes, the accent does matter in understanding as well, right? It absolutely does. Even local accents from native-born English speakers can make communication difficult if you don't know the dialect and the accent and all that, right? If you're not familiar with that. It absolutely makes it harder to understand you. And if you were trying to maximize understanding, you just use a native language that you're best at. 100% every time. Zelensky's more clear than a Bostonite? Are you retarded? I mean, yeah, probably. Anyway, once again, if people have substantive disagreements with me, and I'll try to find... The problem is going to be a recent clip of him speaking Russian is going to be a little harder to find because, well, for political reasons, he does all his clips in Ukrainian at this point, which makes sense, again, from a political perspective. If you think I'm taking an L's, get on the show. This is an open kind of thing. You can drop in, drop out. Canna MBRP, join the Discord. Jump backstage. I'll pull you in. We can have a talk. Send me the clip. Pop Shepsky. Link me. LaFrosty says, what do you feel about the people saying this is bad for viewership because they believe a larger portion of viewers are English speaking? This isn't going to be a live interview. This is going to be edited, and they will dub it into the languages of the native speakers, right? So they will dub it into English. It won't be there might be subtitles too, but it won't be it'll be a dub. It's like a Dragon Ball Z. It'll be a dub of Dragon Ball Z, right? The same thing. It's not gonna impact the viewership. It just won't. If this was a live interview, you might have a point, but it's not. So again, given that is really a non-issue. Lex's whole thing is he wants to speak in a language that he feels that Zelensky's better at. Okay, Rizius is here. Thank God someone's brave enough to challenge me on this tech. Let's bring him on. Hi, you're live. Hello.
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a little low. Hold on 1 second.
Сегодня я инициировал.
Do you mind, before we go, I've given, apparently this is him speaking Russian, and we can watch the clip real quick. Do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is him speaking to the Russian people, and we will, again, it's prepared remarks. Keep that in mind. Keep also in mind that he isn't going to be pausing for applause lines here, I don't think. Well, let's give it a listen so you guys can see the difference.
Сегодня я инициировал телефонный разговор с президентом Российской Федерации. Результат – тишина. Хотя тишина должна быть на Донбассе. Поэтому сегодня я хочу обратиться ко всем гражданам России. Не как президент. Я обращаюсь к российским гражданам как гражданин Украины. С вами нас разделяет более 2000 километров общей границы. Вдоль нее сегодня стоят ваши войска, почти 200 тысяч солдат, тысячи боевых машин. Ваше руководство одобрило их шаг вперед на территорию другой страны. И этот шаг может стать началом большой войны на европейском континенте. Мы точно знаем, нам не нужна война, не холодная, не горячая, не гибридная. Но если на нас будут наступать войска, если у нас попытаются отнять нашу страну, нашу свободу, наши жизни, жизни наших детей, мы будем защищаться. Не наступать, защищаться. Наступая, вы будете видеть наши лица. Не наши спины, наши лица.
Okay. So, that was, again,
Yeah,
I understand that the circumstances here are different. He's not in front of an audience. He's not pausing for applause lines, etc. But that was much more clear, concise, and straightforward than what we saw in his English address to U.S. Congress. There was no stumbling. It was just straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm not, because there isn't much on what I say, because I think your first guest, he was said most of the things I want to say. But I think for me, I think it's because I feel like as someone who can speak more than one language, whilst my second language, which is Chinese language, is not as good as English, I think I'm so confident enough to do it for like 80% of conversations. But not just English. Like it's still it'll work at like 90% of scenarios. So
It's really hard to hear you, buddy. Like, I don't know
Oh,
if you're
sorry.
speaking.
I'm in the
It's like you're
airport.
speaking. Are you on a phone or something?
Give me a second.
Yeah, because I'm having trouble understanding you. Is this guy speaking English? He is. It's just this is tech. Pop Shepsky, that was not better English. Again, I don't speak Russian, but I can tell through inflection, through pausing, through just, again, how he's presenting the information. He was much more comfortable in the Russian than he was in the English. I think that was obvious, but you're free to disagree. That's why we want a third party to give us the real dope here, because obviously I'm going to say that, and obviously you're going to say the other thing. So we need a third party. And no, Testy, polls in chat won't do it. None of you speak Russian, except for maybe Cham Cham Girl. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, was that good Russian or no?
Yes. Yes. I'm so triggered at the fact like so many people don't understand how many countries speak Russian, especially all the countries that bordered Russia. Even like during the like after the fall, they all spoke the languages, and they continue to even speak it to this day. You can go to any of the Baltic countries, and Estonia, Latvia. Even you've got some places around the border of Poland, they can speak all Russian. So, of course, and he's done his movies in Russian. And so, yes, his Russian is 100% better than his English. Sorry, his English is shit. And by the way, whoever
Let's be
said
fair, his English is not shit. It's understandable. It's serviceable.
it's
I can understand it.
I mean, it'd be a level A1 English language, which would be like the very basics, and most of the time he's reading off his stuff. I've seen his one-on-one interviews, and it's very like, let's just say let's go with his Russian language is a lot better than any. He probably knows Russian better than Ukrainian, to be honest. But that's just the environment like all of us grew up in. Like I'm like Soviet kid or whatever. So like it's just like what you grew up, what your grandparents grew up on, even what your parents still speak. So you're chronically surrounded by it. So obviously he's going to know that a lot more than English, which he just started learning a couple years, since I can't discuss for obvious reasons, but since the war started, like that's when he picked up English. So you're comparing a guy that's learned Russian for almost 50 years versus English for the past like 5 years.
To be fair,
there's no
no,
comparison.
so to be fair, and I looked at this Wikipedia, right? He did pass the test for the TOEFL test. Let me get you the exact.
That's very, trust me, like a 5-year-old could pass it.
Look, I know about those, right? Like
yeah,
I get it, but that was before. Hold on, let me get you the exact date, so I'm not giving. He passed a test of TOEFL, test of English as a foreign language at the age of 16. So this was far before the war.
Yeah, a lot of those the education system they in those countries previous, like they taught English, right, for a good bit to know the basics. But that's like about it. He wouldn't be able to express himself and his opinions as clearly as you would in your native language. That's simply how it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's just obvious. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So that's just my.
But again, as everyone will say, you're not a neutral arbiter. So unfortunately, Pop won't accept your version. I mean.
Unlike him, I have risks of getting arrested and shit like that. So he can shut his fucking mouth. So, yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, Russian amazing, English meh, passable, but maybe like hanging out a bar passable, right?
Okay. Thanks for
so I
calling.
just want to give my opinion. Yeah, we're gonna. Bye.
Bye. And again, it's a show. Everyone can just jump in. Like, Pop, you keep saying you won, but you provided no evidence. And people who speak Russian are saying you're wrong. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. I don't know, and it just doesn't pass the smell test either, right? We watched his speech in Congress, at least portions of it, and we watched his speech in Russian that you linked, and it was clearly more. The delivery was just more natural on the one you linked. It just was. Now, again, there are other reasons for that. That's why you won't trust my word. I get that. That's why we have neutral arbiters to make these decisions. But yeah. She doesn't sound Russian at all because she speaks perfect English. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. Rizius says his phone crashed. Well, once your phone gets uncrashed, come on in and tell us what you were going to say. I was very curious. I wanted to know. Here. At the end of the day, let me give you my kind of closing argument for this, in case Rizius doesn't come back. Okay? Lex made a very simple request. It was politically and is politically fraught. I understand that. But this was a request, not a demand. This was something he asked for. You may argue he should have done it privately. And I would agree if that was if that was an option available. But there are plenty of scenarios where I don't have enough information to say whether that was or isn't true, where it isn't the option available. And the best course of action, if you want an answer to this question, is to make it public. So again, that's a neutral one. I can't make any definitive claims there one way or the other because I just don't have enough information. But at the end of the day, making a request like this is not bad. And again, if you want to maximize understanding, English is clearly not the way to go. Russian is. Not because Russia's a superior language. English is the superior language to all languages, okay? Don't at me. But it's the one that they all speak best. Use that one, okay? For an interview. Anyway. Rizzy has come back. I need content. Yes, English is just the best in general. I think it's because it's the one I speak, okay? And I won't have to learn other languages, right? But no, English should be the universal language, the common tongue of the people. I agree. Unfortunately, some people don't speak it that well. And some people speak other languages better. And if you can speak that language that they speak better, communicate with them in the language that they're best at. It's real simple. It's not anything deeper than that. This isn't some weird psyop that you've made up in your head, okay? That's one of the most frustrating parts to me is they're just making shit up in their head. A thing happens, and then they write fanfic about why they think it happened. And then a bunch of them do that same thing, and then they reference each other as proof of why their fanfic is actual reality. Like, it's wild to me. It's crazy. It's MAGA. That's the stuff MAGA does, okay? Let's not be like that. Speaking of, have you guys seen the MAGA on MAGA violence this Christmas? Okay? I know this is a bit of an aside, but it's worth going into, okay? It's worth going into. I want to show you one of the funniest tweets I've seen all day. Okay, let me get to it. One of the funniest. Oh, I can't find it. Oh, where was it? Hold on. Give me a second, please. Please. Here we go. One of the funniest tweets I've seen all day. Laura Loomer. You can't call yourself MAGA and then block me, of all people. I'm the litmus test for what it means to be MAGA. If you block me, you aren't MAGA. Ha ha ha. I'm adding the ha 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 for dramatic effect, but that's some crazy shit. That's crazy. That's some crazy stuff. So, over the weekend, over Christmas, Vivic Ramaswamy. You guys know Vivic? He ran for the 2024 nomination for the Republican Party. He made a tweet because there's been a back and forth between racist MAGA and tech MAGA, okay? Elon Musk, Vivic Ramaswamy, etc. They've been arguing over H-1B visas, okay? And what these are is they're basically work visas for like tech fields and things like that. And Vivek made a post. We're gonna read that post and we're gonna go through it. And a lot of people are very mad at him for this, but it's a fascinating discussion, and I'm hoping to have a show on this next week. So if your team Vivek, or if your team Laura Loomer, or even anti-Vivek, and you want to talk, hit me up, and we'll schedule a date next week to talk about this because it's fascinating. Okay, here's a tweet from Vivic Ramaswamy, and we'll just go through it. The reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over Native Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, a lazy and wrong explanation. A key part of it comes down to the C word. Culture. Tough questions demand tough answers, and if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college, it starts young. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ, or the jock over the valedictorian, will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World, or Zack and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell, or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters, will not produce the best engineers. Fact. I know multiple sets of immigrant parents in the 90s who actively limited how much of their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promoted mediocrity, and their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. More movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons, more books, less TV, more creating, less chillin', more extracurriculars, less hanging out at the mall. Most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents. More normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. If you grow up aspiring to normalcy, normalcy is what you will achieve. Now, close your eyes and visualize which families you knew in the 90s, or even now, who raise their kids according to one model versus the other. Be brutally honest. Normalcy doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. And if we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by China. This can be our Sputnik moment. We've awakened from a slumber before, and we can do it again. Trump's election hopefully marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, but only if our culture fully wakes up. A culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. That's the work we have cut out for us. Rather than wallowing in victimhood and just wishing or legislating alternative hiring practice into existence, I'm confident we can do it again. My dear friends, this has caused a meltdown by a lot of people on the MAGA side. How dare you, Vivic, question that it might be our culture that's the problem? Obviously, it's something else. It's not us. We're not the problem. It can never be us. It can never be anything that we do. It has to be those brown people doing it, right? Crazy. Crazy. It's the Browns, okay? That's what a lot of these, frankly, I don't know another word for it, racist Twitter is saying right now, right? That it's the Browns, basically. Vivic and Elon are just right here. They're just correct. And people like Laura Loomer, Elijah Schaffer, they're just wrong. But it's amazing to see the fight go on, right? It's amazing to see the infighting, and I'm absolutely happy to have a show on this. If you think I'm wrong or misrepresenting it, by all means, hit me up, and you can have your day right on the show, and we can talk about it. But Zero Fuck says they're not correct though. Well, come on my show, defend your position. They are. If you want we've always done it this way. This is the thing. This is always how America does it when they want their top stuff, right? The Manhattan Project. You know what that was? We had some native-born Americans, but we had a lot of immigrants in on the Manhattan Project as well, right? You guys know that, right? From Hungary, Italy, Europe, Germany, all sorts of places, right? World War II, after World War II, when we put a man on the moon. Guess where a lot of NASA... Guess where a lot of the scientists, the top guys at NASA came from. Guess. Take a wild shot. One of the greatest strengths of American culture is that we take the best and brightest from everywhere, and they become American in the process, right? They become American. We integrate them into us. And they become a part of us, right? That's just good practice. And it's how we've succeeded every time. Every time. It's how we've won. Every time. So this idea that suddenly getting the best and brightest from other countries is wrong is wild to me. Look, you can have issues with immigration. That's fine. And there are issues with immigration, especially illegal immigration. But we're talking about legal immigrants. We're talking about, let's be clear, these are not illegals. They're legal. They went through the process. They got the visa. They came over. They're working legally within the system to benefit us. And some of the most racist people you know are mad about that. I don't know how else to say it. Like, you can say it's not racist, but what else am I supposed to say, right? When the only issue at play is that they look different than you. I don't get it. Explain, please. Gelatinous Rube, jump on my show. Explain, please. Maybe I'm wrong. Now's your chance to prove it. Jump backstage. Here, give me a second. I just checked backstage. I had to click on something else to check backstage, thinking all these people telling me I'm wrong will jump backstage and point out the error of my ways here. My backstage is empty, gang. You know, I'll give them a few minutes. Because I understand they're probably doing other things. They probably got other things going on, right? And I am calling them out. I get it. And if you want, right, again, I can set up a show next week for this. I want to set up a show next week about this to talk about it because it's just a fascinating topic to me. Okay, xenophobic, better word. There. See, Bill Bradley corrected me. I accept your correction, sir. I accept it. Racist, probably the wrong word to use. Xenophobic. Let's go with that. Is that better? Do people have problems with my takes here? No, you're absolutely correct, Bill Bradley. I should have used xenophobia. You're absolutely correct. I apologize. Correction taken. Thank you for the better word choice. And I do. I'm being serious. I appreciate corrections, okay? I appreciate corrections. If I'm wrong, or if I'm using the incorrect word, or if I'm not being precise enough, please, by all means. Please, by all means. But Vivek's just correct here. And some of these, some of the replies are just... Oh, man, they're really bad. I don't know if I could show them on screen. Like some of the quote tweets and stuff. People asking to deport Vivek. Vivek was born in America, gang. He's not even an immigrant. Yes, he looks brown, but he's American. He was born here. Ohio's barely America. Correction. See? Oh, Zero Fox. Correction taken. Fair enough. Ohio is barely America. That's true. But these people are citizens, native citizens to the country, right? You can not like them. That's fine. But they're not immigrants. It has been, I'm curious though, and it's so fascinating to watch because there's a lot of people on the right who are looking at this, who are shocked, and they're saying this must be a psyop. This is all a psyop. This whole conversation is a psyop because they simply can't believe that people on their side in their coalition could act in such horrific ways to other members of their own coalition. It's not a psyop, gang. I'm sorry to tell you this. There is just a portion of your coalition who is xenophobic to an extreme degree. They're not. It isn't being manufactured. This is just a thing that you guys is part of your coalition. Much like there are parts of my coalition that I dislike, that I think are horrible, but they're real. I can't pretend that they're a psyop or they're fake, right? I think that the portion of my coalition who revels in violence, the leftists who cheer on the murder of a CEO, they're bad. I'm ashamed of them. I don't like them in my coalition, but they're there. I can't pretend they're not. Okay? This one's on you guys. Okay? This is something you can't wish away. Did you think they were kidding? Did you think that they weren't serious? No, they were absolutely serious. They weren't kidding. Kay says, I think there's a decent argument that can be made about wages, people willing to come here and work for less versus people from the US who have higher salary expectations. Kay, do you want to jump backstage and explain and elaborate? Because I understand it, these are about tech jobs specifically, and specifically high-end engineering positions. But I could be wrong. I could be missing it, and that's fair, right? One of the harder parts of this argument is that there are many different threads on all sides, right? So, okay, again, jump backstage. I'll pull you in. We'll talk for a minute. While we wait, guys, did you know? So, did you guys know that on Sunday, this coming up Sunday, we're having a very special show, okay? We're going to be having Destiny on the show. We're also going to be having Eucharist, friend of the channel, okay? Eucharist on the show. And they're going to be talking to some people about the healthcare in America. And Luigi, was he a hero or was he a terrorist? There's a lot of people who think he's a hero or he's close enough to a hero. What he did was justified. They're going to be talking to Destiny and Eucharist, who disagree with them. Okay. So Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be talking about that. It'll be fun. Should be a fun conversation. I hope you tune in. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think Kay may be busy, unfortunately. Why is everyone busy today? Why does no one want to talk to me? Am I not pretty enough? It's true. I might not be pretty enough. Did everyone get what they wanted for Christmas? I hope you did. I hope you did. But I'm always looking for new voices. I'm always looking for new guests. One of the irons I have currently in the fire, and I can tell you about this now. It's not the big thing. It's not the biggest thing I got cooking, but it is a big thing I got cooking. Okay, so we're trying to get Josiah on the show. We're trying to get Brianna Wu. We're going to try to get Cenk Uygur on the show, and maybe David Pacman. And we're going to be talking about Cenk's recent appearances on things like Turning Point USA with Charlie Kirk, right? And some of his other kind of appearances. Josiah has some big issues with that. I'm going to try to make sure that they have a conversation. That is in process. We are working on that. There's been no commitments yet, but we're trying. We're really working the thing. And again, Cenk's been on my show before. I'm pretty sure we can get there. Okay. If you guys want to join my Discord is right here. I'll give you guys the server invites. Give me a second. I'm getting it to you in a second. Hold on. Okay, in 2 minutes you're going to give me, I don't know if we'll see. It might be a very short conversation, Rube. Okay. Might be a very short conversation. Because we're coming up on 8 o'clock. I'm trying to raid into Prime Kai. I haven't raided into him in a while, so I'm basically waiting for him to go live, and then we're gonna raid out into Prime Kai. But yeah. Boom. So yeah, if you guys want to join my Discord, I put the link in both chats. You click on the link, you accept the rules. Once you accept the rules, you'll be able to access the server. You can see all the channels, etc. And you can As long as you obey the rules, you can talk about whatever you like. Okay. We don't censor opinions. Brevity is the soul of wit. True. That is frustrating to me too, though, because a lot of people are saying like, a lot of people are telling me like, oh, there's been a lot of people who've told me I'm just shilling for Russia because of my opinion on the Lex stuff. What are you doing? Is this where we're at? Are we a bunch of cancel culture Nancys now? Is that's what's going on? Okay. Because I have a disagreement with you on what language it should be done in. You can disagree with me. That's fine. You're wrong, but it's fine. I don't think you're anti-Russian because you disagree with me. I don't think you're anti-anything because you disagree with me. I think you just disagree with me. It's not all... Why does everything have to be a psyop? Why does everything have to be a grift? Why does everything have to be these puppeteers pulling the strings from the shadows? We're going mad as a species. We are going mad. We are going crazy, and we're driving ourselves insane. And I hate to see it. Portland is Burning says, at worst, you're carrying a very modest amount of water for a pretty esoteric argument. I don't know what is even esoteric about that argument. My argument's simple. Which language are you best in? Speak that language. That's the argument. Okay, let's bring on Ash. Okay, Rube. Here you are. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, buddy? Tech Bro Wick. First name Wick, last name Musk. How's it going tonight?
Oh, we've been better, we've been worse. What's up, buddy?
Wait, one more time?
We've been better, we've been worse, but we're here. What you got for us, buddy?
Yeah, so we were talking about we were talking just a moment ago. Camera's not working. All right, that sucks. Anyways.
I can see.
My bad. Oh, you can?
Yeah.
It doesn't show up on my screen.
Well, your screen sucks.
Going over the brief civil war that apparently could not wait until after Christmas for some reason.
No Christmas truce for MAGA. Okay.
Yeah. I think the largest affirmative or anti-affirmative action or anti-DEI lawsuit was on behalf of Southeast Asians versus Harvard, if I'm correct.
I don't know if that's the biggest. I just don't know.
It's pretty big. At the very least, surely you could agree. It's pretty big if it's against Ivy League schools. So, I don't know, man. Like, can you restate your position for me on like why this is xenophobic or your original term was racist?
Well, xenophobic, racist again wasn't the most.
Oh, your go-to was racist.
Yes, because it's a catch-all. I corrected myself.
Yes, that's what's bad.
To be clear, some of it is racist. Right, I've seen some of it, and some of it is just a bunch of brown people, right? And they're saying you're brown, like they're literally pointing at someone and saying you're brown. The Groypers and Nick Fuentes side of things, that's racist. I'm not backing off of that.
Yeah, there's plenty of shit slinging going back and forth.
But the xenophobia by people like Laura Loomer, Elijah Schaefer, etc. That is the argument of that is that. If someone is here legally, they've obtained the visa, they can fulfill the requirements, and as Elon says, they'll fill up as much as they can with Americans, but they can't fill them all. They need people outside. There are more jobs than there are qualified individuals in America. And if you're mad about that, right, then that's a you issue, right? That's xenophobia. Right.
So if there's any in this chain of causality, if there's any point at which the incentives are to take a foreign-born worker over an American citizen, and I don't know, they were just lying about this, that they were going to stuff Americans full or stuff these companies full of foreign-born workers as opposed to
How many?
American-born
Do you know the
workers.
percentage of foreign-born workers versus native-born in tech?
I'm not even going to approach that question. I think it's completely irrelevant in relating to a specific industry, which is tech.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In tech
In
specifically.
tech?
Do you know the percentage?
No, I don't know the exact number. I know that we have something like
Wouldn't it be
500,000
important if you're going to make the
H-1B.
argument, which I've seen people make, that
Okay.
it's just that white people, and this is the argument that Elijah Schaffer makes, white people can't even get interviews because they have to compete with foreign people, foreigners, right, who are going to
I'm not
take less
defending
of
Elijah
them.
Schaffer's perspective.
I understand. I'm just saying this is why I think it's xenophobic, right? If you're going to make that argument, you should again present some data showing, and what I would need to see to even entertain that is that the tech sector in America has more people from foreign countries, whether that be India or otherwise, than it does native-born citizens.
I don't, because you just revealed what your threshold was, which is completely ridiculous. More foreign-born workers than native ones? It has to be
Why
a
is that ridiculous?
60-40 split before there's, or a 51-49 split before that's regarded.
Hold on, thank you
as
for
a
the gift
problem
subs.
to-
Thank you for the gift
Okay.
subs, Cham girl. Really appreciate you. But it doesn't know. You don't know whether it's 1%, 10%,
I know there's around like
40%,
500,000
30%. You
H-1B
don't
visas
know.
in the American.
Is what my argument here. My point here is Elijah doesn't know, and you don't know, as you just said, what percentage is made up of immigrants on H-1B visas.
Okay.
You don't know.
Why
So
does the exact
any
percentage
argument
matter
you make
for my argument?
needs that information, right?
No, it doesn't.
In order to make any comments on whether or not we're giving out too many H-1B visas.
Not in the slightest.
Why not?
Because all I have to do is look around and say, okay, is there a large percentage of people who are not able to, large percentage of qualified people who are complaining about not being able to find, just based off of anecdotal experience. After however many years of DEI hiring practices, absolutely. We're clearing all of it out. It's all gone.
What you're wanting is, well, it's a form of DEI in and of itself, but
Nope. Providing people with
well,
delivering
if
on
you
a
you have
platter-
two
no,
resumes,
absolutely
one has
not.
more qualifications than the other. That the one with more qualifications is an immigrant,
Okay.
so that should get the job. In
What
your
kind of
opinion?
immigrant?
Any kind of a legal immigrant, someone who is a work visa, legally.
A work visa?
Mhm.
That's different from like a naturalized citizen.
I understand. I'm asking you. One is a naturalized citizen. He's a native-born naturalized. doesn't matter.
Naturalized citizen?
The other one is a immigrant on a work visa. Okay.
On a work
The
visa?
different, yes,
Like
on a work
H-1B?
visa, a H-1B work visa. The difference here is that the H-1B work visa is more qualified. It has better qualifications, more experience. The native-born
So it's claimed.
naturalized has less.
Okay.
They're both qualified, quote unquote. Which one should get the job?
How do I have enough information to make this check?
If
choice?
you are a meritocratic person, which I am, the answer is clear. You have enough
Okay.
at this point. The person who gets the job is the one who is better qualified. Period.
Yeah. No, logically, yes, it follows from if this person is more qualified, then maybe you could do it. Maybe you could justify it.
Maybe. No, it's just justified.
Oh, so I just say, or this person's more qualified. I no longer need any more tests. I just say that they're more qualified, or the person is now incentivized to, people on the other side of the world are now incentivized to stack the resume with things that might not be true. And we have to take this out of the realm of theory and into the realm of practice.
Well,
Are there
yes,
any
if one
incentives for
person
people
is
to
lying on their
behave
resume,
poorly here?
this is why you have betters, right? You have people who are in the interview process, in the hiring selection process. You have people who you hire to do that, to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Betters for what?
Lies, false
Who says that
credentials.
Why are the false credentials undesirable in this case? If somebody
Because
comes
they
over
don't
and they're willing to
represent
work
actual
an
ability.
80-hour week for a 40-hour salary, that might be higher in these companies' priorities than merit and qualifications, saving a little bit of extra money. Having onboard staff 24/7, people who don't have families or homes or spouses to return to, or at the very least worry about, and who have less negotiating power overall. We're not like, all right, this person's more qualified, this person's not. That's not like a practical consideration in the real world, where you could just lie about that stuff and other incentives
Sure, they could lie. It's true.
can take over.
They could lie,
Or
right?
lie.
But
Elon
you
hasn't
need
had
evidence
any
that they're lying.
trouble, has not had any trouble filling, not Tesla, sorry, SpaceX with American-born workers at all, whatsoever, because he's required to, by the way. He did go out and find those people. We could compromise, by the way. We could put just a $10 million tax, since these people are so important and they can't be found anywhere else in the United States. There's no qualified people in the United States who can handle some post request.
Hold on.
JavaScript.
The United States is 4% of the world population. Do you think if you're looking for the top 1%, that they're all going to be United States citizens?
I never made that claim.
Okay, so if you want to hire the best, right? You want to hire the very, very top, the tippy top. It makes sense that a lot of the people are going to be found outside of the U.S. Do you think that we should be
Possibly.
bringing those people in? Do you think that
At
we should
what
be giving
cost?
them visas? What
Cost.
do you think the cost is?
At what cost?
What I'm asking you, what do you think the cost is?
The cost could be that American.
No, what do you think it is? Not what it could be. What do you think is actually happening?
I think that absolutely we have more qualified people who are natives, speak the language, have an incentive to go forward and grow these companies that are being passed over because they do not want to accept a 40-hour-a-week salary or an 80-hour or 100-hour. Absolutely. And if your claim is that an H-1B visa holder has no negative repercussions for their negotiating power by virtue of the fact that they're staying in America, why are you grimacing by that?
Well, because that's not my argument.
You don't think that?
That's not what I'm saying. My
No,
argument is very simple.
You're trying to
My
skip
statement is
over
very
the things
simple.
that actually matter.
The person who has the best qualifications should get the job.
How do I verify that?
There
How
are
do I
whole
verify that the company
teams that the company has in place to make these kinds of verifications? That's their job.
Okay. No, it isn't.
Wait, what? You don't think companies have a vetting process?
Okay. So
What? No, you're saying okay. They have people that they hire
Vetting
whose
process for
whole
what?
job is to make sure that the candidates who are putting in their qualifications, who are interfering through the job, who are talking about this, that it's their whole thing to make sure that the people who are applying for their jobs actually have the credentials, the qualifications, the experience, the very specific set of skills that the job requires, that these people have those things. So,
right.
Again,
earlier you said most qualified.
Yes, the most qualified.
That's the difference. No. Those are two different things.
Of course I want the most qualified.
No, you might want the most qualified. That's what you're using to push this argument. But you're telling me the company has no financial concern. If the most qualified person who is foreign born says, you're going to have to sponsor me with an H-1B visa, and it's going to cost you about, I'm not going to settle for anything less than a $2 million per year salary. You're telling me they're always going to go for that person, regardless of any cost? There are competing costs and competing concerns.
But there are certain positions where companies will offer huge amounts of sums of money because they want the very best and they need the very best.
What percentage of those, since this is your argument, and it is important to know this data, what percentage of H-1B1 visa, what percentage of these visa holders are making over $100,000 a year?
Do you know the answer?
Nope.
So I could just make it up. I don't know, to be
clear. You could. I mean, we could check.
I don't know.
We should check.
We should.
I know it's late
because that's important information for anyone to know.
Hey, there are competing concerns in this debate. that not everybody. Okay, so you might just be able to pitch something to you that is a possibility. So this is an empathy test to see if you can empathize with another human being's perspective, does not share your political ideology. Could a company who has a minimum number of top performers, let's say 2 or 3 people out of like a 20-person team, really good at their jobs, could they say, or be incentivized, and especially if they're living in one of the most expensive states in the union, could they possibly say, you know what, we already have enough top talent, but we need
we
more
know
people
the
just
answer
to check things.
to your question, by the way.
Yeah.
The median annual salary for approved H-1B applicants was $118,000. So most of them, or a good portion. Yeah.
The median.
The median. Mm-hmm.
Not the mean.
Not the mean. The median. They're all making over $100,000 a year.
All?
Well, not all. Obviously, it's a median. But
that's not what that means. Anyways, going back to the question, is it possible that they could say, hey, we're just going to try to fill this with people with less negotiating power who are willing to work longer hours just to be on hand, but they're not as important. They don't need as higher qualifications. What's our best job pool for people who are less qualified overall, but just qualified enough that the fact that they have less negotiating power when it comes to salary or leaving for another company makes them easier to work with or easier to pull in? How do we fill these slots, these seats?
Sure, that does make sense. That is a possibility, but I'm telling you that in specific jobs that you don't want qualified, you want the best.
Okay.
And a lot of engineering jobs, a lot of tech jobs, you want the best. You just want the best.
All right.
So yes, they could. A company could do that.
We've got
a company could do that, but they would fail to compete.
As it possibly be right now. Tech is peak, as best as it could be. There's
because
as
Samrami, or however you say his name, says, we have a cap on the amount of H-1B visas we can give out. There's a cap to it.
Right.
We can't give out more than a certain amount. I don't know the specific amount off the top of my head.
Not only are there no native-born
we could make it better
more qualified than
by
current tech
removing that
workers.
cap.
Your assumption is we could bring in a couple million more qualified workers, or 2 million, maybe 1 billion more.
If there are 1 billion more people who are more qualified than the average American, yes, we should make them American.
Yeah, instantly here.
We want to begin the process of making them American here. Yes, we want them on our team.
Yes, and the only way to do that, of course, is to bring them here.
I mean, it's not the only way.
Mm-hmm. That's the position you're defending.
Well, hold on. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with bringing 1 billion people who are fucking top 1%?
What's wrong with bringing?
Well, there won't be 1 billion if they're top 1%, right? But if we could take the best and brightest of every other country and bring them here, why not?
Who are the best and brightest of every other country, and where are they coming from?
Every other country, right? Like,
where are they coming? And that's evenly distributed across every other country?
I don't think it is, because some countries have bigger populations than others, right? India, China.
Saved yourself.
Why did I say I'm failing to understand like what the problem is with this. If you want the best and brightest in America, you make the best and brightest people Americans.
Sure.
Yeah. And I want that.
Sure.
I think that's good.
So you're okay if everybody goes through with the fine-tooth comb and confirms that the best and brightest are in America right now. What do we do with when we find? Just so we're
anyone who has falsified their qualifications should be deported. Yes.
What if they were less qualified to begin with, but they were just accepted for these other salary concerns that I mentioned earlier?
What do you mean? If they falsified their qualifications, they should be deported.
No. What if they didn't falsify their qualifications?
Oh, and people. So if
people brought them in anyways,
I don't think that's
negotiating
happening.
Power.
Maybe you could point me where it's happening, but I don't see tech companies specifically hiring people who are less qualified.
They're never concerned with money or negotiating power.
They are, but their primary concern is ability.
Mm.
That's why they make a lot of money. If their primary concern is not that, they fail.
Okay. I think that this is completely disconnected from reality.
I
but
don't.
I'm glad that we have settled at the very least on some like we disagree on the facts, but I think we agree on the conclusions that should follow from those facts.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we
I
have
think they
shortages
should
of
just
a bunch
casting
of
it
industries
as-
in America. We have a doctor shortage. We have a nurse shortage. We have a shortage in tech in a lot of cases. We need more
Yeah.
people. We are not generating those people who either A,
We're not
choose to
they
go.
don't exist. You keep claiming that they don't exist. This is the weird thing. If
Hold
I
on.
go through
There
and
is
I
a
find
teacher
people with-
shortage in America because not enough Americans want to be teachers.
hold on. We were talking about qualified people and important jobs like tech. We're not going to like the lowest of the low in America.
Nurses.
please.
I'm saying that this is an across the board problem. That we have a
Yeah.
lot of fields, teachers, nurses, doctors, tech, a lot of industries who are hurting for qualified individuals. They want as many as they can. They're trying. They can't get them.
Right. It's an employee market right? People are having easy times getting into jobs. The most have more people
Yes,
been getting
the
educated
unemployment's
or
super
fewer
low.
people? Unemployment's super low and it's okay. What about underemployment? Is anybody with a college degree, are they struggling to find work in their specified industry? Is that all only their fault? Or I'm just trying to follow the incentives.
I'm not
here,
saying
or
it's
make
their
you think that
fault.
somebody else.
What?
Of
There's
course,
no
it's their
blame
fault.
here.
If they're not qualified, but
If
they
they
did get
can't
educated,
compete,
then
they can't
something's
compete.
wrong with them. Because the only other explanation is that the company isn't hiring them because they want to save on some other kind of cost.
Or there
where
are better
merit is not
qualified
their top
candidates out
priority.
there.
Sure, maybe it's
Again,
some
if I'm
combination of
hiring a
both.
company, if I'm hiring a tech company, and I need
Okay.
I need the best of the best. I need the people who are going to do the best job possible. I am going to invest in the best candidates I could find. And if those
Absolutely.
happen to be foreign born, I'm going to get them visas, and I'm going to get them over, and I'm going to make
Price
the
is
most money I
no
can
issue.
possibly make.
Okay.
Yes, that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that America,
In the real market,
as
people have
Vivic
multiple
says,
competing
America has a
concerns.
culture problem. We make excuses. We make excuses
90s
for our
sitcoms
failures.
are not the reason.
We make
why-
excuses for our failures. It's not the reason, but we will sit here and we will say it's those mean old companies' fault. When instead we need to pick ourselves up by the bootstraps, recognize we have an internal locus of control, and can do whatever needs doing in order to get the jobs that we think we want to get. And if we can't get them, we create them. We have one of the best places. If you think right now that there are native-born white Americans who are not being hired because and they're just out there, this untapped well of talent. Man, have I gotta show me them. I will create a business, utilize this talent, and make a killing. Okay? Make a killing.
What would you do with them?
I don't think they exist.
They don't exactly. There are no white men, or you brought up white, which is kind of weird here. But there are no native-born
I'm
talent.
bringing up white because that's the argument that Elijah Schaefer and others are making.
Okay, I'm not making the Elijah Schaefer argument.
enough.
I'm just pointing out. Surely, like we could solve this. We could just input, like, let's say, $1 million tax on these tech companies every time they bring in a H-1B1 visa, and said because they had to bring them in. And they're so talented, they're top talent.
You
going
can make
to
it so expensive that they no longer can. So either one of two
$1
things will
million
happen.
is
They will
all- do
leave
you
the
know what
country
Apple's
and set up
profits
shop
are?
in a country that doesn't have those taxes. So that
Sure.
industry is now no longer American, and you've taken away any possibility for any American to get that job unless they go foreign, right? So
I
congratulations.
never thought I'd see the day
Uh,
when you condemn taxes. This is a new and
What do you think?
fascinating
I think
development
that-
in your character arc.
I think that, yes, there could be too many taxes. Have I ever said that we should have like a 99%
no
tax
idea.
rate.
I'm teasing you.
I'm a capitalist. I'm not a
No,
communist.
that would be
I'm not a
ridiculous.
socialist. We can have there is an optimal tax
Well,
rate. That's not 0, and it's also not 100. But there is an optimal tax rate which helps the community, helps the nation, and helps the people.
I agree. Again, I'm teasing you. Surely there's some kind of cost checking, some kind of checking measure that could probably involve cost. Since it's an economic argument that these people are so productive and they bring in so much.
Not
clearly an
productive,
easy
talented.
check.
Qualified.
What? Yeah, that's productive. There's no disconnecting those two in the context of this discussion.
Carry on. I'll see that point. Fair.
Yeah. It's I think that the checks should be cost based. And I think that if we put those checks in, then we would see a change in the market. I am open to the possibility that we would not see those changes. However, I think that money could be put to good use in making sure that the slightly less qualified among us aren't completely left out in the dust, because the whole expectation of paying taxes to begin with is that I'm to receive some kind of investment from the nation or preferential treatment in the nation that I was born in. And if there cannot be that kind of reciprocal arrangement, then I don't want to live under that system. That system should not exist.
So you think that native-born citizens who are less qualified should get preferential treatment over someone who is more qualified? That's what I'm asking.
Never said that. No, you're not asking. You're making the claim about my
I'm
claim.
asking.
No,
so
you're
this is what
restating
you're
my
saying,
argument.
yes
It's
or
not
no?
a question.
So that's
at
not
all.
what you're saying. So you're not saying.
No.
So
I brought
be
up
clear.
earlier that there are multiple competing costs when it comes to evaluating whether somebody is qualified and evaluating whether or not these tech companies will actually find those qualified people. That's my primary concern. I think it's not a question of whether you can find qualified people. It's okay if qualified becomes our new marker for whether or not tech companies are doing right by American citizens and the subsidies that, or the citizens who provided their subsidies to begin with. If the question is qualification, then they have a incentive to engage in bad behavior. And I would like some checks on that bad behavior, just in case. Such as
a cap on the
H-1B
visas, maybe?
No, a tax for the H-1B1. There shouldn't be a cap. If
there's a tax of how much you wanted? $1 million?
I was being very conservative when I said 1 million.
A tax.
It should probably be about 20 million. It's top talent.
Okay.
You said that price was no object earlier when it came to finding top talent.
Price was no object. I said that price was secondary.
Yes, you did.
I thought it was a secondary condition to the talent.
Well, secondary concern means it's below the primary one.
But
which
when
is
the price
talent.
raises too high, it becomes a primary concern.
Ah, there we go.
Hold on. Do you think that
price?
Yes, obviously.
Or maybe you.
But these people are making over $100,000 a year.
Okay.
118,000 is a median. That's the average H-1B visa.
Shouldn't it?
That's a lot of money. It's more than I make.
They're working in tech. They're bringing colossal profits for these tech companies. Don't you think they're entitled to a little bit more than just a measly $100,000?
No. Why?
Because
you can live fine in most places on $100,000.
Sure. But that's not what the profits are going. So if the profits aren't being distributed to the workers according to their
I'm not a Marxist.
Utility.
I don't care about that.
That's Everybody who's ever asked for a raise is a Marxist. That's a very funny tangent that we could go down. Let's not do that. It's not nice, you know?
I'm just saying the company and the employer, the employee, right, get to negotiate their salary. Okay, they find a price that they think is fair, and they go with that. Companies in tech specifically want to hire actual qualified individuals, the best of the best of the best. The claims that white people or native-born citizens are being turned down in favor of immigrants on H-1B visas, I have yet to see quantified. I don't think this is real.
Okay.
If you can show me that it is, then fair. But all I've seen so far are
We
I
definitely
have a
could.
friend that
We could
said
put in some checks. Like I said earlier. Surely these tech companies, which are largely unregulated, don't need so much money that they're not handing to the workers to begin with.
I don't think there's even a problem here.
Okay. The
So
people
why
who
are
are
we
affected
trying to fix
say
something
that
that's not
there's a
broken?
problem.
Why are we adding regulations?
people
Why are we adding taxes when we
who's-
don't need to?
The people who say they're affected are saying there's a problem. I think that warrants
No.
investigation.
Oh my God. Yes, there are people who say that, oh, I would be a better host than Wick TV. I'm a better moderator. You know what my answer to them? Go out and do it. And you know what? They try, they fail.
Yeah.
Right?
It
9
warrants
times out of 10.
investigation, doesn't it?
Not from my end.
It's not from your end. But you're not the
Proof will be in
governing
the
body
pudding. If you're
of
qualified, you'll get
YouTube.
hired.
Yeah. Okay. No, that was fun. All right, I gotta jump off.
See you later, buddy.
Thank you for keeping up with my nonsense.
Of course. Okay, we have more people backstage. Let's bring them on. Okay, you're both here. What did you want to talk about?
Hello.
I'm gonna end soon, but go ahead.
You're gonna end soon. Have you already done
I've been
Lex
streaming for
Fridman
2.5
bit?
hours. Yeah, we've been.
That's the bare minimum.
That's what
Should
we've
be
been doing. Have you watched my show before? This is what we do.
You should be.
We do
you
about
should be
2
streaming
hours
for,
and then we end.
you should stream for 6 hours, 7 hours. You should grind the streamer lifestyle.
I'm good on that. I don't.
I actually wanted to catch Ash before he left, but
Like 4 hours minimum. That should be your minimum.
I don't make
time.
enough money to do. You guys don't pay me enough to stream for 8
Yeah,
hours a day.
that's how it works. If you stream for 4 hours minimum, you'll make more money. People will be like, "Oh my god, Wick is really grinding it out. We should donate more." Or
you know what? Let
something.
me change that real quick.
Oh, yeah, give me money. Okay, I'll wait.
I'm here for the Lex Fridman
Okay.
thing.
Give me your argument. I don't know if you heard my arguments earlier. Did you? Were you here for earlier?
No, I haven't. I had a
Thank you
guest
for the
earlier.
sub, LaFrosty. I appreciate it.
See, I told you it's working. The
Well,
more you grind,
Because I
the
just
more.
asked him for money.
Exactly.
Yeah,
No,
but
but
the
like-
more you grind, the more opportunities you have to ask people
Maybe,
for money.
but I don't. I value my time higher than my money. So.
You don't enjoy streaming?
I do for about 2 or 3 hours, and then I stop enjoying it.
Hey,
Wow.
Wick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, no Cal Mike.
So these countries that we're drawing in this top talent from, what is there? Do you think there's a fundamental difference in how their governments invest in getting people the higher education required for these top tech jobs?
I'm sure there's differences. I don't know them off the top of my
Wait,
head.
what are we talking about
Do-
now?
Do you think Vivek would be willing to have his taxes raised if it equaled Americans getting the higher education required?
I can't speak for Vivek. I have no idea.
Well, he's the one that made the tweet. Because my issue, I think you're correct in saying it's a talent issue. I think we're probably just importing the labor needs for those positions. I don't necessarily buy that like qualified Americans are just not being given the jobs, but I don't. His tweet seemed to suggest it was like a work ethic issue, and I think that's
Yes, I do
the
think that's
problem.
true. I know
Yeah,
that the culture. Let's use Chinese culture. I'm familiar with that. The own emphasis on academic excellence amongst people in China, in their families, for their children, is far, far higher than that of America. Far, far higher, right? That's their culture. It just is. Like American kids, and it's just true. They're like, whatever makes you happy. In China, they're like,
Isn't it
happy?
Japan?
What's happy have to do with it? Get your ass in school. You better make an A, and if you don't make an A, you're gonna get a whooping, right?
Well,
That's
it's
the
also what
difference.
we're
Exactly.
sharing.
Hey, to
It's also
defend
what we're
America,
sharing
but
people
isn't it a
to.
debate on the state, the area, the whatever? Isn't it like if you want to go that way, the U.S. has a pretty big Asian community itself, pretty big Chinese community. Doesn't that apply?
Yeah, their
Sort of.
culture is, again, for especially immigrants, Chinese immigrants, first generation immigrants.
Yeah,
They
but
have a
that
much different culture than American
that
culture.
defeats your argument.
Why?
Because America is a melting pot. All the cultures that
Okay.
exist within America are part of American culture in the end.
But not to the same degree, because it is
What do
diluted
you
with
mean?
a
Yeah,
bunch
I
of
would
other
also
countries.
not agree with that.
Right? Chinese culture is also not like monochromatic, but it is
Yeah,
far
exactly.
likelier that a Chinese student, a Chinese child, will be driven and emphasize academic excellence and performance over an American kid. That's just true.
But it's also what industry we're steering them to, or what majors we are too, because Vivek kind of roots out of the MAGA movement that's been calling higher education a scam
my
and go
gosh.
learn to be a welder,
I mean, that's
which has
also a
been for
type
the
of
last 2 years. So
education.
now
No, but
we're
like
getting the
it's logical though,
we
right?
don't have enough qualified people. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
logical
make
though, right? Because if you don't have the qualified people in your country, and you will ultimately lose out to the people that, or the countries that are willing to train their, people better or educate them better, then obviously you will lose out to those guys. And the thing is that I wanted to catch Ash on before he left was that the thing is, like, this workforce, you can't just like pull out of thin air. They have to come from somewhere, right? And if we hire based on this meritocracy, then obviously the person with the best merit should get it. And if that happens to be a Chinese person because they're getting fucking militarized or trained like super hard, then so be it, right? It should be the best, as Wick said, right?
Yeah, I don't have any issue of grabbing the talent from where you need to grab it as required. If there aren't Americans qualified to do it, I don't have a problem with hiring visa workers. The only thing I was questioning was like, well, what's Vivek's solution? Because he had a long diatribe of a tweet complaining about American workers. So I'm like, okay, well, what are solutions to get Americans more qualified for these?
For Lex Fridman.
Is it investment
Well,
in Americans, making higher education more affordable so more people have the opportunity to go? Like what kind of things can we do to get the American workforce into the modern era while learning engineering and tech jobs instead of steering them away from that?
Well, not shutting down the fucking, education wing of your government would be one, I think. But also, yes, definitely making it more affordable, or actually just making it, free. Yeah, exactly. Like many other places in the world, it's taxpayer paid, right? But and I'm not gonna sit here and be like, haha, EU better than the US
You
or
usually have
anything like
an
that.
entrance exam, and in many countries, it's based on your achievements in high school. What sort of university you get
Or
to.
like a grade level you have to pass to get into.
Yeah.
Like to be a doctor, you need a certain, all that shit. But it's all taxpayer paid. But I know that a thing that Americans hold really dearly is the idea that they fucking despise paying for everyone else. And I just don't think it's realistic to do it that way. So making it more affordable would probably just be lowering the cost from the university's side. I'm not sure if you should legislate it like that, or if there has to be a change on the side of the universities themselves or whatever, but definitely. And also, I'm just gonna say it, the whole idea of homeschooling your children is completely foreign and alien to me. The idea that there isn't like a board of education, that literally, has a requirement of you learning civics, just basic civics. It is scary how many Americans that we interact with like daily online and on Twitter and shit like that very, very genuinely have no idea how the US government even works, or how all this shit is funded, or how the economy works, or how things are paid for. And it's kind of crazy that so many people have opinions of something they have no concept of.
Anything else from you guys?
Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm here to ask you about Friedman.
Go ahead. What's your? We can do this again. That's fine.
Tell me your opinion.
So I think that it's very simple, right? Lex and Zelenskyy should speak in the language that they are most fluent in to ease understanding. Again, this isn't a live interview. This isn't something they're doing in the moment. This will be edited. There will be post It'll be edited in post and things. English dubs, Ukrainian dubs, all the dubs of all the languages that they feel are necessary will be put in. It won't cause me any issue as a viewer, even though I don't speak Russian, right? I'll be able to understand fine. But I think that Lex wanting to maximize understanding is the right call here in this conversation. Yeah.
I think it's the worst possible call.
Why?
I think asking a president of a country who's being attacked by a country that wants to replace his language with the language to say, yeah, let's, as a head of state, why don't we conduct the discussion in the language that is being actively worked to replace yours?
It's the language Zelensky speaks best.
That's irrelevant.
No, it's the only relevant thing in a conversation with when again your goal is, if your goal is
No,
to
not
maximize
when the
communication-
discussion inevitably will be about Russia wanting to destroy Ukraine and replace it with the Russian language.
Wouldn't it be nice if they
Why
both
would-
understood what each other was saying to the maximum
Are you
amount?
saying that Zelensky's English is not up
It's
to par
serviceable.
to? Yeah.
I don't think it's the best choice for a 3-hour discussion. No.
Well, it's the best choice in this context, definitely.
Well,
We disagree.
if we were going to find a middle ground, wouldn't we just say asking is not an issue, but not doing the interview because Zelensky might say no would be an issue?
If Zelensky says no, and then Lex is like, I'm not doing the interview now, I think that is L for Lex, right? He should do the interview no matter whether Zelensky says he wants it in Russian, or if he wants it in Ukrainian, or if he wants it in Chinese even, right? Like, you should do the interview with Zelensky no matter what language Zelensky wants to do it in. But I think that him asking to do it in Russian is reasonable, and I agree with the reasoning.
Zelensky's
100%.
English struggles or not, that would be his burden to carry through the interview anyway. So it should be probably his choice. Like if I was Lex, which
Again,
I'm
I
obviously
agree.
not,
It should
he
be
should do it
Zelensky's
anyway.
choice, but I think asking is no sin.
I wouldn't call it a sin. I prefer he probably would have asked in private, but I heard you earlier with the explanations of why maybe that would be too difficult
Or
to
it
get a
just
hold of him.
wasn't working, right? For
I'm pretty sure he
variety of reasons.
didn't learn it just recently.
well?
Vladimir. There was a whole thing that he didn't, wasn't there?
What do you? Can you repeat that, please?
Oh.
You, Lucy. What did you just say?
Oh no, I just said something to an audience member.
Again, Zelensky. I'm not trying to insult the man. I think it's great. He speaks serviceable English. Yes, that's true. But and we did this test earlier. His Russian is just better.
Yeah,
just
but
is.
he's not speaking as an individual that's just choosing the best language for the best fluency. He's a representative of a country that is now actively defending itself against the Russian state that is trying to eliminate actively Ukrainian and replace it with Russian.
And when he explains that to Lex, I would like him to do it in a language which he can properly convey the horror.
Which
of
is
that.
the language that is supposed to replace his.
But he speaks it. And he
That's
speaks
his
it better.
native
He's probably
language.
grown up
He's
with
better
yes,
at it.
exactly.
I think
So
it's
like,
irrelevant.
it's not. If you know
is.
Lex and Lex's content, you would also know that it's much more so a conversation where he like tries to connect with people more so than a debate or whatever. So if that happens to be in Russian, then that's good. And also, it will also be available to all the Russian audience, and maybe he could change some minds with
What's the audience
proper
that thinks
conversation
Zelensky's kinda
with the
weak?
opposition leader, where he
luck.
can present some ideas that are really
Good
good, and
luck
maybe he
with
can change some minds like
changing-
that.
Yes, good luck. Good luck with changing a Russian audience's minds with Lex Fridman and.
Thinking
and
you could change
Zelensky.
0 minds in an entire country is the dumb part. Of course you can. Even if it's just one Russian person who's like, maybe Zelensky isn't a bad guy. Wouldn't that be better?
What audience do you think he kind of reached by going on left?
It's not a very naive thing. It's just very simple. It
No,
makes the interview more genuine.
extremely naive.
Nothing is getting lost in translation because he can literally pinpoint exactly what he means. It opens up for a whole other audience that he wants to influence in a country that's like right up against it, and it's not for an English audience
If
necessarily.
you think that Lex Fridman and Zelensky interview will reach and influence the Russian audience, then I think you are being quite naive. Yes.
That's fine, and you can feel that way. But the thing is, making
I
it
think
available
you're a
or
bit out
better
of touch,
available.
to be
What?
quite honest.
Do
I
you,
think you're a bit out of
do you-
touch.
No,
if
definitely not.
if
If you
Zelensky
think
is
every single
looking,
Russian is just a brainwashed like bot that believes what the government believes, then you're out of touch, like 100%.
Yes, of
hey,
course.
Zelensky trying to reach an English-speaking
Like
audience, an
the
American
Hold
audience.
on. I want to hear what
Okay.
I want to hear what No Cow Mike has to say. Now Cow Mike's trying to get in.
Okay.
What do you have to say?
Listen,
Okay.
if Zelensky, if you think he's trying to reach like an English-speaking, predominantly American audience that might be unsympathetic or kind of neutral, do you think Zelensky would be making a calculated decision that doing the interview in English, even if it's a little bit broken, not 100%,
Slowed down, not blocked.
that people might relate better if he's doing it in English?
That might be a
and then read.
calculation he makes. I think it would be again, that's something he has to decide. I think that there is an argument, however, to allowing him to be in his native language allows him to more properly convey concepts, ideas, emotions, etc. that will be carried over in the dub to the English audience. But if there is an additional obstacle of him stumbling through the 3-hour interview, right, and getting caught up on ideas and words and being unable to properly convey things, that's going to be detrimental to his cause. Again, it's a
100%.
calculation he has to make. And as I said before, he gets to decide. Zelensky, not you, not me, not Lucy, not all the people who are mad at Lex. Zelensky gets to pick, right?
Not Vivek.
Yeah, not anyone else. So yeah, I think that he's gonna have to weigh those, weigh the politics of it versus the efficacy of communication and make his own decision.
Wick, if you're ending the show, what did you think of Nosferatu?
Oh, Nosferatu was excellent. I give it an A, solid A. The quibbles with the ending, but I think the acting was phenomenal. First of all, Count Orlu did Orlok or whatever his name is did a fantastic job. I think the dialogue was on point. I loved kind of the old timey atmosphere of it. It was very great. The atmosphere, the cinematography, right? The way they shot those scenes was picturesque. I'm a fan. Okay, I thought it was very good.
Would you say it's better or not as good as Bram Stoker's Dracula? If you remember that.
I do remember that. I'd have to watch them side by side. It's close. It's close. What out of 10? For the genre, probably a 9. Just as in general, an 8.
Goodness. So I guess I'm gonna.
Is there any other issues though you had with me, Lucy? Because you wanted to talk about the Lexing.
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead. No, I'm giving you the chance. That's what I'm doing. But I do have to
Right.
end soonish. But yeah.
Okay. I think we're using a very silly argument. Zelensky has, at this point, conducted how many interviews? Has he stumbled?
Many.
Has he?
Yes, some of them are harder
has he
to
been
watch than
known
others,
to? Has he been known to stumble and not get his ideas across?
They're short form
Yes.
interviews.
Is he famous for that?
Especially in the beginning, it was very apparent, but his English has definitely improved since he's interacted so much, I assume, internationally.
It's better
But
than it was before.
if I could choose to speak Danish right now and you would understand me, because that's my native language, right? I could explain some concepts way better than I can in American or English, I guess. So why wouldn't I want to do that if I got the option to, right? Especially if it's an interview about something very important.
Basically, explain why. And the whole idea of reaching a Russian audience is very, very out of touch. I'm sorry. If the idea that the death toll the economic situation would not sway Russians, but an interview with
Hold on, Russian
Lex,
speaking, not necessarily Russians. There's a lot of countries that border Russia
well,
that speak
the
Russian.
argument has been
Latvia, Estonia, etc.
Russians.
The argument I was trying to make was that if the content is also more readily available for a Russian populace, since it's in their language, I would argue that it has much more success at having influence over that, populace, rather than in a language that they might be.
Hold on, let me ask you this, Lucy. Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
if they do it in English, do you think that there should be a Russian dub for those who want to listen to it in Russian?
I honestly don't think it'll be even aired in Russia.
Okay, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you think there should be a Russian language dub. If they do the conversation in English, would it be okay if Lex Fridman made a Russian dub and released that as well?
Like if he chose to?
Yeah,
Sure.
if he wanted to. What would be wrong with that, if anything?
I mean, if he chose to, then sure, we can do it.
Okay, so
But what's the difference
what's the
then?
substantive difference here then?
Yeah.
The substantive difference is not demanding, requesting of Zelensky to speak in the language that is being actively pushed as the one to replace the language of his country.
Again,
But he already
there is
speaks
a
Russian.
reason for
Yeah,
that.
that's
It isn't
irrelevant.
it isn't out of
He does.
nowhere that he makes this
He learned
request.
Ukrainian, so that's irrelevant that he speaks it. The fact that Ukraine has been Russified through the years and there are many Russian native speakers in it now, it's not an argument for what you're. It's not the argument that you think you're making.
Okay, but do you know how closely their languages relate to one another?
Of course, I know.
Okay. Then can you also admit
I
that
am
it's so
a
closely
person from
related?
Eastern Europe as well, after all.
Is it so closely related that we could make the argument that even if it is differentiated between Russian and Ukrainian, that he can still speak Russian, and the interviewer, Lex, can also speak Russian, and it is his native language. He grew up with this language and learned it. Why would it be bad? Why? Besides the Russian replacement you're trying to argue for.
Besides Russia waging a genocidal war against Ukraine and wanting to replace Ukraine with Russian. Yes, I think that's a
Besides
pretty
that.
key. Well, besides the most important argument, you mean?
Yes, because we don't agree on that argument.
Well,
So-
you cannot agree, but then we don't really have anything to talk about.
Well,
at
sure
that
we do.
point.
Because
No.
if I don't agree with your statement that
you
speaking in
can-
Russian isn't, condoning or accepting Russian takeover over Ukraine.
Look,
then
I would.
why?
Here,
Why?
I don't think we need to go down this route. Like Lucy, if
Yeah,
Lex
exactly.
spoke fluent Ukrainian, I would agree with you. They should use Ukrainian, but unfortunately, he
Well, they
doesn't.
apparently are so interchangeable, even according to the person here. Then why not just have
I don't
Lex
agree with
speak in
that.
Russian
I think that even dialects, like I have trouble understanding some other people who speak English, who are from like Britain sometimes, right? Even though they're the same
That's
language, there's
fair.
dialects are different enough that it's gonna be a struggle, right? So I don't go down that route, right? But at the end of the day, all we got, again, the argument's really simple. If you want to maximize, like Lex wants to maximize communication, and so he wants to speak in the language that Zelensky is best at.
Maximizing
That's just
communication
it.
should not just be the only goal here.
Why
in
not?
this context.
Bigger reach, more influence.
Over
Why
what?
would that be bad?
Over who?
Everyone, right?
I think you can achieve the same results without Russia.
Well, you qualified it by saying it was more than. So obviously you
Yeah.
can't, right?
But I think you can achieve the same communication results even without both speakers using Russian. Yes.
Perhaps. But we're
Not
speaking
perhaps,
about a
100%.
person who speaks Russian better than English.
Irrelevant.
It's
Not
not
really,
irrelevant.
no.
That's what we gotta say. It's
That's-
not
that- that's-
irrelevant.
yeah, that's
This
exactly
is
where
the-
we
it's the
disagree. It's
crux
not irrelevant at all.
It's
of
not
the
a
issue.
regular meeting between.
It's the crux of the issue.
people.
But
As long as Zelensky gets the choice, then it
yeah, no,
doesn't.
Zelensky can.
We're all
can
good, right?
pick.
I mean,
I am okay with whatever Zelensky chooses. To be
Okay,
quite frank with
then
you,
that
100%.
that
but I
sounds like
think
a
that Lex
compromise for everybody.
asking is fine, and in fact,
Exactly.
probably a good idea. But Zelensky, I'm sorry, Zelensky can pick, and I
also-
think his choice should absolutely be respected. Absolutely.
Yeah. And just to like conclude on it, Lex is probably the least problematic person I have experienced over the last year or two, right? So obviously he does this as like a courteous thing towards Zelensky. He's not doing it to be like fucking haha, we should speak Russian because they're trying to take your country or whatever. Like he's not doing this. So this argument,
Well,
like I don't know where it's coming from besides
that's
the people
great,
that are
but-
looking in from the outside. And
That's
it's just
great.
stupid to me.
Yeah, it is stupid for him to ask for that. Yes, I agree.
No, it's stupid to assume that he's asking out of malicious reasons, knowing Lex and
His
his
reasons
content.
do not matter.
Well, he's already asked, so that ship has sailed. We'll
If
see
it's-
what the
If
response
it's
is.
malicious, then it's malicious. Otherwise,
But it's
just
not
stupid.
malicious. That's the thing.
Well, otherwise, it's just stupid.
Do you believe that Lex asked him out of malicious reasons to speak in Russian?
No, I believe it was stupidity on his end.
Okay, we just disagree
Okay.
on that. That's fine. I do have to end. I love you all.
right.
Lucy, I did say 6 p.m. Eastern, didn't I? Right? Like we've been the
start.
The meat of
Listen.
it was.
Wait, no, you didn't. You just
Did
said
I not?
that it's
I might
gonna
not have.
happen.
I might have
No,
forgotten.
no,
That's
you
very
just-
true.
There you
But
go. It's like there you go.
but yeah, like we
Thank you guys so
we
much.
had a
I'll
whole
dip.
2-hour conversation on it. You can.
Well,
We
now
have
we
to-
had a solid, juiced out 5 minute.
We did.
conversation on it.
Thank
It
you
was
for
like,
coming. We could talk about it again sometime. Gang, if you like the content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Give me money, super chat, subs, all that really helps. Next stream will be Sunday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. We will have Destiny. We will have the Soy Pill. We will have Eucharist. We will have a few others, and we'll be talking about Luigi. Hero or terrorist? Tune on in. Should be fun. Thanks for coming, gang. Who are we raiding out to? I don't see any. Hold on, is Prime not streaming? Isn't it Monday?
I never got an alert that he went live.
Oh, it's not Monday, is it? It's Thursday.
Wait, who?
Prime Kai. Oh, that's sad.
Oh.
Okay. I don't see anyone streaming that. I just don't see anyone streaming, honestly.
I guess we got to stay on.
Yeah, no, I'm not staying on. I gotta eat. I got things to
Oh,
do. I
I'll
got
see you
dogs to walk. Okay. I love you all. I'll see you guys.
Bye.